Welcome to Legion of Myths Game Master Insight. Tonight, our panel of seasoned tabletop RPG veterans dives headfirst into personal stories, bold expectations, and powerful insights. Get ready to ignite your imagination and elevate your next gaming session. All right, welcome to Legion of Myths Game Master Insight. I'm your host, John Maxley Oshlow, and I'm truly grateful you are with us for tonight's discussion. Game Master Insight is a forum where our panelists share experiences, ideas, and advice on tonight's topic of in-game consequences for character actions, highlighting their unique perspectives and expectations. I sincerely hope you enjoy the conversation. Please consider supporting Legion of Myth through the links in Livestream's description. Rumble rants and super chats of less than $20 I will read at the end of each segment. $20 or more, I will interrupt the segment to read your rant or chat as immediately as I can. I'm not going to derail the conversation, but I'll get to it as quickly as I can. At $50 or more, I will take a drink in your name, and you can force the panelists to answer any tabletop RPG-related question of your choice right then and there. And because it came up again last week, no, I will not let you get me drunk. If you start making me down these things like every 5 minutes, I will either pace myself or cut off the rule. So we'll leave it at that. If we reach $100 or more in Super Chats or Rumble Rants, there will be a $25 Palladium Books or Drive-Thru RPG gift card giveaway during the rando portion or the segment 5 portion of the show towards the end of the live stream. Legion of Myth YouTube members and Rumble subscribers, as well as tonight's Super Chatters and Rumble Ranters, have the opportunity to win, but you must be watching at the time of the giveaway to claim your victory, else it rolls over to last week. Legion of Myth moderators will time out or even ban people who attack any panelist or chatter. Attack the argument, not the person, and keep your various social media beefs off my dang show. Please like this video and subscribe to all the panelist channels you can find in the description. And thank you for your time and support. All right. With all of that out of the way, let's meet our panelists. First, we have the Earth Dawn hater. No, we have with us Ryan Howard, also known as Rollin' Bones. Briefly tell us who you are, what content you create, and what your tabletop RPG experience is.
Yeah, so I am Ryan Howard, the former host of Rollin' Bones with Ryan Howard, currently the proprietor of Bonehead Ideas with Ryan Howard over on Substack. I am also the creator of Night Haven. I've got a book coming out sometime in the middle towards the end of February, Night Haven, the Rakes Codex Volume 1. I'm excited to share more about that. And it's been a while since I've been on a live stream. So, Max, thanks for helping me get back on here. Absolutely. I'm glad you're here. You and I have talked in the past, and it's always been fun. So I'm really thankful that you're here. Next to him, we have also for the first time on, and we've actually talked one time previously to this, but we have Tabletop Crispy. Or there it says, I'm sorry, Table Runner Crispy. My bad. Crispy, same as Ryan over there. Briefly tell us. I can't talk right now. Briefly tell us who you are.
I got the gist.
What
it's all good.
content you create and your tabletop RPG experience.
Sure. So I have a YouTube channel. You'll find me at Table Runner. My current project is in character role play, like really exploring that high trust role playing games. Got my start in the hobby in 1986 when I picked up a game called Robotech. That was my game of choice. Robotech, then Riffs, and then from there a little bit of Shadowrun.
I didn't actually missed TMNT and After the Bomb.
I know, I did, dude. I wrote it down. I got TMT here. I was playing that too. I didn't actually get started in fantasy role playing until university in 1997. From then, I've run a whole gamut of games, lots of different games. But as I mentioned, I'm an advocate for this kind of high trust role playing where players as well as game master create the world together. And so we call that 4D style, but I'm really focused on that in-character play.
You're actually scheduled to be on another show in the future. Is that the one on player and game master roles?
No, I'm actually on the session 0.
Okay.
But no one else wants to be on there with me. So maybe that'll change after if I don't do too badly on this.
Well, it's funny because a lot of the old school people think that session 0 is a dumb thing. Guys, we've been doing session 0 ever since we were this tall. We just didn't call it that. Calm down.
That's my take too. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
All right, and then next to him, we have Connell, the Cigar DM. Please introduce yourself and briefly tell us what products or media you create and your tabletop RPG experience. And in case he doesn't tell anybody, he's a professional dungeon master. He gets paid to do it. Yeah, I'm calling you out on that. Go ahead.
Asshole. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. What weird, huh? Get that fixed. A little nasal problem you got there.
My name is Connell, the Cigar DM. You can find me here pretty soon back on Sundays where we're going to reboot the movie reviews and try to add in some like role playing aspects. Take a movie that is a high fantasy or whatnot and try to inject your RPG choice of system in and see how it may or may not work for you. I love branching into other people's IPs, I rolls, and see how I can tweak it and play with it a little bit. That's the kind of stuff we will be doing on my channel with the other misfits on that particular island. Gaming wise, I got started much later in life compared to some of you guys. I was already drank my way out of college, so I was taking my younger brother to college and pick him up. Eventually, somebody asked me, "Hey, if you want to roll some plastic dice and make believe," I'm like, "Sure." I've about an hour to kill, so that's how I got started. 3.5, made my way up to Pathfinder, and just kind of got stuck as Max called me out. I am a professional DM. I run fifth edition. Yes, yes, no, but it keeps my lights on.
I mean, technically, I get paid to do this, right? I'm technically a professional YouTuber. Okay, doesn't pay the bills. All right. Well, if you didn't have to color in your dice, you haven't been playing D&D long enough. That's what I have to say. Now, with that said, we're going to start right into it. So, our topic today, if you didn't get it already, is in-game consequences for character actions. And that can mean a bunch of different things to different people. And we're going to hit 4 kind of premises of that, things that happen directly to the character, things that happen in the environment around them, yada, yada. So we'll see what these guys have to say when it comes to, I could get my note cards ready, when it comes to that. So let's start off the questions with segment 1, consequences, the importance of consequences. All right. And we're going to start with Ryan Howard here. And I'm going to ask him the first question, which is, how does the presence of in-game consequences for character actions affect the overall dynamic of an adventure? And to what extent do you choose to incorporate them into your games?
So for me, consequences of character actions don't so much affect the adventure as much as they are the adventure. When I structure adventures, I don't try to set up some kind of plot or anything like that. I don't do that anymore. Now what I do is I have factions that are working in my world. So I'll use Nighthaven. That's the world that I run my games in. You've got various street gangs, the guards, the prostitutes that walk through the city. All these people have various vested interests in things that are going on. And so what I will start off with is, here is a situation that's happening. Here is something new that is occurring on the streets of the city. You players go interact with, whoever you think has information on this, or essentially do whatever you want with this information. And how you proceed is going to determine how this is going to play out. Because inevitably you're going to step on somebody's toes. And because Nighthaven is a dangerous place, someone is then going to hold a dagger to your throat. Now, you have conflict, and there you have an actual adventure.
Is Nighthaven similar to like Lankmar in that regard then?
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
It is very heavily I like to call it Sin City meets Lankmar.
Okay.
Because it's like a mob movie in a fantasy city.
Interesting. Okay. So do you make an effort to ensure the players understand the potential outcomes of their actions, or do you just you roll the dice, take your chances, so to speak?
I will usually tell them, like, hey, the person you're about to talk to has a reputation, or if they're involved with a faction, hey, your group doesn't like this guy or this particular group. This guy has this particular reputation for being nasty, and then just kind of let them go wild. Or if they just go in ignorant, if they don't try to find out anything about who they're talking to, at that point, they're on their own.
Okay, I'm going to dive into this just a little bit more here because I'm curious about. Also, I want to direct my questions a little bit better towards you. Mm-hmm. Is this a pretty high intrigue setting then?
Yes.
All right, so you're not going to have a situation where, and I'm using the very cliche stuff because I'm sure we've all seen it before, where, the Duke and his entourage wishes to talk to you, and the player's like, I assassinate him, or some nonsense, or like, it'd be really fun if we could break into the mage tower and steal a book. Just the nonsense that characters like to do when, one, they're definitely not prepared for it, but they think they're smarter than you. To roll it back, what my point is here is, like, do they upfront know that if they even think about anything, that Sorry. Said that wrong. They're not even have access to that, are they? At least at low level.
I mean, they could try. There are some parties that might be interested in someone assassinating the Duke, or stealing a particular tome from a wizard's tower.
For low level characters.
Again, like the option is there.
Okay.
They're probably going to get their crap kicked in. I don't know what kind of language you want us using on here, but
I prefer to stay away from cussing, but I don't care if you do it. It's like try not to, but I'm not going to stop you from doing it.
Yeah, like they're probably going to get their butts handed to them, but that's on them to find out, because it's a lot of like pulling jobs, and anyone who's ever seen a heist movie knows, what do you do before you pull the job? You have to case it. And so in casing a wizard's tower, you're going to find out, oh, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this right now, or maybe we need help.
Or they don't case it, and all of a sudden they find out it had a whole ton of wards, and they're all piles of stone right now.
Yep.
Okay, no, that's kind of what I was trying to narrate. I was visualizing in my head. I don't know why I couldn't articulate the question properly for that. Okay, so I've got a better feel of that. So you're in some regard, you're not running a traditional. You might be running a traditional campaign, but you're not running a like traditional module type set of adventures.
No.
Okay. All right. So because that's where you can be much more disruptive, so to speak, in that. All right. I'll probably come back to you with a couple more, but so that I'm not using up all the follow-up questions right now, I'll move on. Or actually, Connell and Crispy, do you have anything to say about what he said, or are you ready for me to ask you a question?
Yeah, Ryan, you mentioned factions in your game. Can you tell us, like, is that something that you give to the players beforehand? Is there a baseline knowledge? Is this kind of setting level, or is it something that is just discovered through play? Like the factions may change depending on. Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah. So starting out, there are factions that are active in the city. Part of what my books are going to do is detail factions that operate in certain regions of the city. And then the goal ultimately is for the players to rise up through the ranks and either kind of take over those existing factions or create their own rival factions that overtake the existing ones. So like there is already an established power in the city. There's already people who really kind of do everything. It's just a matter of, can I undercut them, or can I join them and stab them in the back? Or it's that kind of stuff of there's stuff here, but you can build parallel to it and then usurp it, or you can enter in at the ground level of these factions and work your way to the top.
Just another, if I can, just another question on this. Are most consequences then delivered out at the hands of a faction, or is how does that work in this this setting that you're building?
Yeah, so there's a lot of faction related consequences. If you like smack around one of the Scarlet Sisters, those are the prostitutes. If you smack around one of them too hard, you're going to get a visit from a couple big guys who are going to do what was done to her, but a degree worse. But there's also like direct consequences of, you mess with the wrong person, they're going to pull out a pistol and shoot you in the head or something like that.
So again, I'm sorry, Connell, please jump in. But in the moment when the characters are interacting with a faction, how do you decide on the consequence of that interaction? Is this something that, because you've spent a lot of time thinking about this, you can just improv on the spot? Do you use a random table? What could you describe a little bit of how you adjudicate that?
It's a mix of both. When it's my game that I'm running, I can do it in my head because I'm familiar with these factions. To make it replicable for other people who will, buy my book, hopefully, I include tables, and I include essentially like codes of conduct and laws that each of the factions operate under. So you see, like, if someone does this, this is the consequence. Or you can just, roll a reaction roll, or roll a on one of the random tables that I give you to determine like how they're going to respond, whether it's immediate or down the line in some ways.
Thanks.
All right.
Oh, no problem.
No, that was good. That was good clarification there. So I appreciate that. Connell, did you have anything you want to jump in with, or?
No, any questions I had, Crispy took care of. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to have, but that conversation there did actually have me write down a follow-up question that I'm going to give all of you guys towards the end of the segment. So look at that. I'm a horrible host. I didn't even have good questions prepared. Crispy asked all the good questions. So thank you, Crispy. And your punishment for that is to now have to answer the question. And that question is, just to remind folks out there, is how does the presence of in-game consequences for character actions affect the overall dynamic of an adventure? And to what extent do you choose to incorporate them in your games?
Well, Ryan, you mentioned this before we went live, and I couldn't agree with you more. There is no adventure without the consequence. The consequences are the adventure. That really is what happens. And I would say that this comes back to my elevator pitch to get people into the hobby. When I meet with someone, did I drink too much Red Bull before this? You can kind of tell. Well, I get really excited about this because the whole premise, the way I elevator pitch role-playing games to new people is that I tell them, look, we're going to create this fictional world. It's a world simulation. We're going to create a world that's going to feel real and believable for a couple hours at a time. And in order for that to feel real, a world has to have consequences.
Yep.
I can't imagine having a world that you could believe, if you could suspend the disbelief that magic exists or something like that, but then there's no consequence for using magic. There's no consequence for, so I think that consequences is where really the rubber meets the road. Like this is, as you can imagine, for a guy like that's going to promote in-character play and this 4D style, I'm really big on player agency. I can't imagine having any player agency if you don't have consequences for those actions. It's essentially saying that your actions don't matter. And I think they should matter. So that's my elevator pitch, is that we're going to simulate a world that's believable must have consequences. And that is the adventure. Dynamic, like you had in your question to us, you said, how does it affect the overall dynamic of the adventure? Well, you can't have an adventure that's dynamic if everything is already set in stone. It's already static.
Right.
You have to have that variability. You can't, to me, that's just not, it's not appealing at all to have something that is already predetermined and you're just waiting for me to hit that, okay, this segment, then this segment, then this segment. This is why I agreed with Ryan, where he said, really, I don't storyboard. I start off with an initial conflict because the conflict is where the real juice is, right? We start with that conflict, and then how the player characters interact with that conflict will determine what happens next. And I don't like thinking ahead of too far ahead. Like, well, if they do this, then they do this, then they do this. I'd rather in the moment have to improv that. Like, okay, they've improvised. Now I'm surprised. I like being surprised. I like when players do things that are unanticipated. But I also want players to know that when they do something, there will be a consequence and they don't get to choose the consequence, just like real life. Yep. There's going to be an action reaction. The world's going to push back against you. For me, that's a large part of the appeal. Now, what I do in my games is my prep is less about designing encounters and looking for like a dungeon design or something like that. It's more about thinking about motivations of the world, the NPCs, those figures in the world that are of some import. Like I'm thinking of that's why I asked Ryan about the faction side of things. I like the idea that there's these other powerful figures within the world that have their own motivations, that are driving towards it. Regardless of what the player characters are doing, they're still moving ahead. And so I spend a lot of time, that's my prep, is just thinking
I think we're going to dive into that, if I remember correctly, a little bit later on in the show too. So that's going to be some good stuff.
So then, we start with that. In my games, after the game, we spend a lot of time. Do I have to shut up now?
Well, I was going to let you finish your statement there, but since you did, since you stopped yourself, I will read it there. Thank you, Squirrel Hermit, for the $20. I really appreciate it. He says, enjoying the new GMI stream format. Great stuff. Well, thank the panelists. The panelists are great. I'm just some dum-dum that tries to ask some questions and get some responses from them. So I appreciate it, Squirrel Hermit. It's good to see you here. By the way, I have a couple other chats that are starred and some other super chats, but as most of you know, $20 or more gets read as soon as I can.
Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And because I recognize now I've been talking for a while.
You're good.
What we do what I like to do in my games is after the game, we sit around and we talk about what happened. Like, so we have this kind of decompress. where we talk about all the things. And what we like to do, or what I like to do to build trust between the game master and the players, ourselves together, is that we focus on the consequences and the idea behind what drove that consequence. I like to reveal the thought process, because the last thing I want is I don't want to have players think that I'm being capricious. I want them to understand, here's why you may not agree with this consequence, but here's the thought process behind it. I wasn't trying to be heavy-handed, or I wasn't trying to punish you. This is what was going on in my head. What else could have happened? And we have this discussion, which is a good brainstorming for the conflict for the next session.
So quick question to you about that. Do you follow the Shauner method of just doing one-shots, or do you do campaigns?
So I do follow the Shauner method in the sense of, I like the hard role-playing the hard way. I like the concepts in that book. We have gravitated less, unless we're doing an experiment like what we do with a no prep challenge. The no prep challenge is valuable as a one-shot because it really does encourage you to have to improvise on the spot. And so I like the mental gymnastics of that, but I prefer to have campaigns because I like to see the development of the characters as they interact in the
So I'm much more on board with you than I was with Shauner. So this is my follow-up question then. So now knowing that, are there times when you really can't tell them the reason for a consequence because it will spoil something? So
the way I do it, so that's a great question, because the question then becomes, is there something to spoil? What I do is maybe a little bit different. I start every session with new secrets. And the secrets, I try, now this may be something that they discover. If they discover it, if it comes up, then that's a secret that has now been discovered. It's now fact, but I'll use new ones the next week. So there's less. So if I don't use one, I don't hold on to it like, oh, this was a great idea. I throw it away and I start with new ones the next week. So wait, what is this? There are things that, of course, I'm not going to reveal, but those things that I don't reveal are more about the motivations of the other characters in the world. I don't do, like Ryan said, I don't do plots. I don't. I don't storyboard. I don't do the what are those called? The notes. I'm not a novelist. I'm not trying to be a novelist.
Like an outline?
Yeah, I don't do that. I just start with the conflict and then we see where it goes from there. And I try to improvise on the spot more than not.
Well, and if I can say something real quick in response to that question there, Max, any consequence that a player kind of stumbles into blindly and they don't really know the reason behind, that then is a place where you as the GM can go, well, you go find out why that happened the way it did. That's a new mystery for you to solve.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Again, I like to use very simple examples here, just so no matter how much experience somebody has in the hobby, whether just getting into it, been doing it for 40 years, can understand it. I'm looking at something to say, well, why did Ryan get punished by having to give up all of his items and locked up for a week, and Mike or say Crispy, they just ridiculed him for a moment and said go work at the tavern for a day, community service. Why were there different consequences when we basically did the same thing? Well, you don't necessarily know the motivation of the person who was doing it. I had to punish Crispy, unfortunately, because he did something wrong, but he's actually in my gang that I've got him do, whatever, you don't know what, right. You don't know what the motivation is. And sometimes I could see, I'm not saying this will happen. I'm just saying I could see like, man, if I tell you exactly what the motivation was, I spoil something. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any, Connell, do you want to jump in with anything either Ryan or Crispy said?
No, they got it. I'm not gonna. Why the fuck am I here?
Well, then let me see if I have another follow up for Crispy here, since I asked Ryan 2 or 3. This is good. This is great for the 4D guys. Can you describe a time when a consequence led to an unexpected but positive outcome in a game?
To try to think of one off my head, I'm sure that it has happened.
I hate doing these type of questions for that purpose. I usually avoid them, but I was just wondering, and I'm not going to put you on the spot for this. It's not fair for me to do that because I didn't,
But the answer of your question is I think that a consequence. it's immaterial to me whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I just want them to have something that happens. So in it, yes, I have had many times, because I'm looking for the unexpected. I want things to happen to surprise me. So to answer your question, I suppose the best answer would be, we often will have unexpected character death. Like, no one has plot armor. So in our games, you'll sometimes have somebody just die. Often it's my characters. I'm not really good at keeping characters alive, as it turns out. But that's okay. It leads to more interesting things that happen. So we had, in one of our ongoing games, just an encounter, and Phil's character bought the farm in a big way. And it was, wow, like, oh, this sucks. We've just had 9 sessions with him. But it turned out to lead to a very interesting one-on-one session with Max, where there was this interesting development that happened with his character. That was an unexpected positive thing that happened from this, again, unexpected death. But I'm not fudging the roles. You died. Away we go. So I hope that answers your question. Yes, I have certainly seen good things happen from unexpected. In fact, most of the time, whatever happens is for the best.
Sure.
It is. If everyone dies, it's still for the best. It's all good.
One of the things that's come up in chat a couple of times already, and so I want to make this clarification. Yes, literally everything you do, you attack a monster, it has a consequence. You do damage, or it can attack you back, or whatever it happens to be. You say something to another character in the game, NPC or PC, and that character is going to react. That is a consequence of an action. But we're not being that pedantic about it today. We're talking specifically about if your character does something, I don't want to say stupid, because you can do really awesome things too that were kind of surprising. You decided that you were going to park yourself in the town, and your paladin is going to run around and lay on hands to everybody for whatever reason that day. I don't know. Or you're going to set up shop and just start your own little orphanage or healing clinic, or whatever it happens to be. You can do positive things. But for the most part, guys, I know literally everything that people do has a consequence to it. That's just part of the nature of the game. With that said, we're talking about the things that go outside the norm a little bit. So, yes, thank you for the comments, but we are focused on when players do something really ridiculous, whether good or bad, is more what we're focused on. So
gotcha. To put kind of to summarize that type of consequence out there for anyone, is everyone here familiar with either the novel or the Harrison Ford movie Patriot Games?
Mm-hmm.
So that's, to me, the perfect example of consequences, like unexpected consequences coming from a man just kind of reacting in the moment. He sees a guy get out of a car with a gun, he tackles him, he subdues the other attackers, ends up, he foiled an assassination attempt by the IRA, and now his life is entirely thrown out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
That's
perfect example.
The kind of stuff.
Yep. Did a good deed. Wasn't even trying to be the jerk character. Did a good deed, and look what happened. So yes, that's a perfect example. All right, let's move over to Connell. Connell, let's see if you can beat the answers that were already given. No, that's not the point here. Let's get your perspective is what the actual truth is here. So ask you the same question. How does the presence of in-game consequences for character actions affect the overall dynamic of an adventure? And to what extent do you choose to incorporate them in your games? And why I think this is going to be really fun is because I've heard you say a few comments that I'm going to grill you on if you don't address them because of your public and professional game master status.
I have 2 different tables I run, one for children and one for adults. How I run for the children is going to be, of course, different than the one from the adults. So I'm going to take it from consequences, more from this children's side of my DMing, more so than the adult side, I think, for the most part. All right. I'm a big fan of Greek mythology. I think all kids need to read Greek mythology. And I'm finding more and more schools are just not doing it anymore. And it's tragic to me. With that being said, there's consequences in our games. And there should be. Crispy is right. So is Ryan. I do more of the storyboard, more of the overall plot than let the game evolve in its own way. And that's a great way. That's just not my bag, So with that being said, it's like if I get a table of new players, level 1, they're walking through the woods. I'll have a Gray Render, which is from D&D, come out of the woods. Alignment wise, they're neutral. They're just great big monsters that are basically cows. I mean, all they do is eat leaves, and just kind of a nuisance. If the players attack it, well, I know I have a bunch of murdering hobos and I know how to treat the campaign. If they don't, maybe some of the consequences would be if one wants to be a druid, down the road he gets this Grey Render as his companion. Now, there is a story out of Greek mythology with Hera and I think it's Jason, where Hera pretended to be an old lady and he helped her across a stream or a body of water. I more or less do the same thing in my campaign. And if I got one player that goes out of his way to make sure the old woman gets on the other side, he's awarded down the road. It's not, as soon as you do something good, you get awarded. Do something bad, you get discipline. It's making seeds. It's planting seeds for things to happen down the road. If he helps the old lady, he might get a magical something down the road before everybody else does, he or she. And if he does something dumb, he might not have a good night of sleep for a couple of weeks, which will drop his con, his strength, or wisdom, whatever I decide to.
What specifically ruins his night of sleep?
Just can't sleep. Have horrible nightmares. He is restless. He just cannot sleep. And because of that, I'll affect the con. I'll affect charisma. I'll pick a stat, and I'll roll a d4. And because of this, there's how it breaks down.
He's being followed by Colin Hay with an acoustic guitar.
That works. But gaming for kids is a little bit different than gaming for adults when it comes to consequences. You got to actually measure it out to something that they will understand.
Sure. So how could you, in that case, then, obviously you're not the parent of each one of these kids, but how can you put, let's say, moral consequences? And I know we're going to talk more about moral consequences a little later, but how can you put consequences on the kids the way they understand in kind of a parental aspect? Almost use it like for lack of a better term, a biblical parable, so to speak.
Oh, Saturday morning cartoons where there's a moral at the end of each cartoon. If a kid does something just incredibly just dumb or just becomes a murder hobo at an early age, at an early age, this is not how we're adults game. I will have a conversation with him after a game and ask him what he thinks. Just talk to him, trying to see where his head's at, because maybe he has had a bad day at school, whatever. And tell them that maybe you should think a little bit more before you do something. Just be that figure in their life that actually listens to them and talk to them and not let it be fucking creepy. And that's how I handle if it goes completely off the rail. That's how, if it goes completely off the rail, that's a different answer. But if I can handle it after game, I'll handle it after game. And I'll talk to the parents about it.
Okay. I mean, all of you guys, in some regard or another, have pretty much answered all of the
Can I ask Connell a question?
Please, by all means.
You have a little different experience than I do. I carefully vet who I game with, whereas you game at a store. Is that right?
There is no vetting.
So how do you handle a situation where you have let's say a young person that comes in and they just want to act out violent, just violence. Like, I don't care. I just want to kill everything. So how do you handle something like that so that there's an in-game consequence? Like, what kind of in-game consequences do you do in that situation?
Sometimes I'll have them get arrested by the city guard and more or less put their character into timeout. I mean, I know that sounds dumb, but having them have to basically walk away from the table for anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes normally squares them back to more not violent. And then if it just completely goes off the rail, like I was saying, parents normally stick either in the shop or they're close by, and I have their phone numbers. I'll call them like, hey, your kid's having a bad night. Don't worry about this one. We'll eat the charge. Have them come back next week. All's good. You have to basically be a teacher, a role model, and a big brother when you're dealing with when you're dealing with kids. and have a lot of patience.
So Crispy's question. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Finish up.
So when you have a child that's just being overly violent, I try to more or less just get that out of the system, put them in jail, show them that there are consequences. You can't murder the bartender because he gave you a weird look or whatever the case may be.
Now that scenario that you're talking right there is actually what my question to all of you is to some degree going to be. And answer it how you want, Connell. If you want to do it for adults or for kids, you want to keep on the kids thing, go for it. But what about characters? So you've decided to arrest a character, right? Now that character wants to plan a heist to break out of prison, or he's fighting all the guards, or whatever. He's causing even more problems because, and I'm going to go back to my high school days. Yes, even as a 15, 16-year-old high school, we did, dumb stuff like this. We're like, look, don't just try to kill him. I can get away. I can figure this out. I'll just tease him. I'll just, whatever. So if you watch cop videos nowadays, just some of the nonsense that people do on like Code Blue Cam or Midwest Safety or whatever, like, I can't believe people act that way. But then I'm like, oh, wait, we did that as player characters. If they're basically they're suffering the consequences for the first bad action, and now they're exacerbating it. How do you guys handle that? It doesn't have to be that exact scenario. Just use the generic. Already caused a consequence. Now they're exacerbating it. Won't pay their fines. Won't go peacefully to jail. Yada yada yada. How do you handle that? Okay, we can start with you, Connell, since you were the one to answer the question. We'll just make sure everybody gets a chance to answer.
Sure.
If I only get that from adults from time to time, if it just keeps barreling, kids normally just work it out really quick. But if it keeps barreling down, then they done something, they get caught, he or she is arrested, there's a fine. If they don't pay the fine, the city guards after them, and it just keeps ramping up where they're now banned from that kingdom. Well, 2/3 of the storylines in that camp. So now you have to either make some kind of recompense, or you have to come up with a new character. Your character is banned from this kingdom or whatever. That's how I feel about it.
Let's bounce over to Ryan real quickly. If you want to jump in on that. Now you got your intrigue setting there. You got your Lankmar. I guess the Nighthaven. Sorry, the daggers could be a bunch of daggers to the back. That's the easy answer. But again, if they're already the first consequences happen and they're already exacerbating the problem, how do you let that play out?
Well, there's something, and this is a question I actually had for Connell. About his kids. Is there a degree of them kind of policing themselves going out at the table, where if someone just continuously is a pain in the butt, the other kids are like, dude, you're ruining our evening. Like, what are you doing here? Does that happen?
Yeah, they will to a certain degree, especially with the older kids, not older, but kids have been with me for a couple of years now, will police the rest of the table. They know what to expect. They know they'll have a good time. And it takes one apple to ruin a barrel kind of scenario, and they'll kind of, police each other. And so it's cool. It works out. Sometimes it doesn't, but for most time they police each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of where there's two kind of sets of consequences that you can impose on people. There's the in-game actual consequences of, if you do this, continuously, you're gonna get fined, go to jail, be executed, end up on the wrong side of some kind of deity or wizard and be cursed or something like that. But then there's also the at the table consequences kind of amongst each other, where you as the GM or the players even will be like, hey, can you stop this? Can you quit it?
Yep, and I think that's a good fight. We might be touching on that to some degree in the fourth segment, but I think it was good to bring up here in case we don't. So, yeah, Crispy, did you want to jump in on that?
Yeah. Well, again, nothing but respect for someone who can run a game for random kids. Just not for me. I game with adults. Well, adjusted adults for the most part.
Wait, you're not a gamer. They're well-adjusted. Nobody believes that.
Exactly. So no one believes it, but it is nonetheless true. I'm very selective of who, because again, it comes back to this high trust model game where I'm trusting players to even help me invent the world on the fly. I just can't do that with people that are either to the point where they think they can act with impunity, or if there is a consequence, they're going to whine to me about it. I just don't allow that in my games, and to be fair to my players, they're not looking for that either. They're, again, we're trying to simulate a world that we can all believe, and it's just not believable to be able to do something crazy and not have the world push back. I try to handle everything in game, and because I'm trying to stay in character the whole time. Now, as a game master, I'm in character as a huge cast of NPCs. Those NPCs in a large way will push back. So the pushback, like what Ryan was saying, was like, hey, you know, that's going to come in the form of an actual interaction in the game, rather than me as the game master saying, what's wrong with you? Did you not get enough sleep? Like, do you need to, what? I try to avoid that. And then after the game session, we'll have a talk about it. And somebody's like, you know what, I was pretty upset about this when this happened. And we'll talk about it and laugh about it and then move on. But when the game is on, none of us are trying to break character. We're all in character the whole time. And so adjustments that happen in the world by the world. Does that make sense, Max? I hope I'm answering your question.
Absolutely, it does. One of the things that I would like to, this isn't the segment for it, so we're all good, but when we get into the other segments, when we kind of dive into more examples of stuff, I'd definitely love to hear you guys' examples of how you incorporate some of this, because I do it, but it sounds like you guys do it a little bit differently than me, and I think that that's interesting. So, Ryan, did you need to step away for a moment?
No, I'm good right now.
Okay. Just wanted to be, sorry, I'm writing down a note here.
How am I going to lynch Connell later on this evening?
No.
In-game consequence, sir. In-game.
It could be in-game.
Sorry, it's just if I don't write this note down, I'll forget, and I think it's something that I want to cover later. Or in my final thoughts. So, wait, can't call that's probably copyrighted by Jerry Springer, right? Anyway, okay, well, do you guys have anything else you want to talk about on the importance of consequences before we go into the next segment?
Nope.
Okay, it's a great discussion. All right, going to do a little bit of advertising and so forth right now before we go to the next one. The next segment is going to be on moral and ethical consequences. I think to some degree they tipped their hat a little bit on this, which is good. So hopefully that teased you into what that could mean. But we'll get into some moral and ethical consequences, basically bad behavior or exceedingly good behavior from the players. Before we do that, though, let's read some super chats. And what do we have here? So we got a membership update up here. Thank you very much. I am not saying your name, Mercurius. It's not going to... almost called you Troffle, by the way. One of you Australians. Anyway, but thank you very much for the gifted membership. Who did you give it to? Oh, I don't see that anymore. Anyway, he gifted a membership. I appreciate that. Then for $5, Law Dog says, the consequences are the adventure. Spot on, Crispy. And I think all of us as game masters, even if we don't take that as literal as said, we all have, well, I didn't plan for any of this today, but you guys did something really weird, and now everything got derailed or but it still had a great adventure. And I've told I'm going to tell it at the end of the stream, but I've got the one that I tell a lot that happened in one of my Earth Dawn games that ended up killing a character. Where it's just like, this is not at all what I was even thinking was going to happen today, but thanks to your shenanigans, boom, there we go. And it turns into the adventure. So it absolutely can happen. I think more game masters need to do that. Instead of hand waving or yelling or just saying, the guards come get you or whatever, throw away whatever it is that you planned and just roll with this. It could be really fun. Mm-hmm. It could also be a TPK if they want to get too snooty, you know. And just as a side note, you guys can jump in even on this chats. If you got something you guys want to say with regard to these as well, you can jump in.
I think Law Dog has excellent taste.
Well, we're not to that super chat yet. Let's see, this one's not super chat, but Mercurius again says there should always be consequences for using magic. I'm a firm believer in things like DCC, right? Where it corrupts you. I love that kind of stuff. I'm also a firm believer that mages should not live inside the middle of cities because fireballs escape. And I don't like static magic systems that don't allow for an oopsie. Like magic users should be out there in the freaking woods behind mini solid walls, maybe a dome of some sort. I don't care, but they shouldn't be in the middle of town. Not if they've got fireballs on their fingertips. That's my take. I know some people are like, it's just a tool like a gun. Yeah, well, we regulate guns too. You know, I'm a Second Amendment purist, but we still, you know, regulate guns. You don't just, you know, want to bam, bam, bam wherever you want, right?
Right. And an extension of magic should always have consequences. For me, I think clerics not only like does their behavior have to be in alignment with kind of their god's will and their you know religion's code of conduct, but the use of their magic has to be in accordance with the
yeah, 100%, Ryan. I how do you feel about this? There in more modern versions of the world's most popular fantasy role-playing game, they've allowed clerics to be kind of non-denominational. I don't like it. I like it's you're a religious figure. You should role play that as a religious figure. Why are you not trying to convert the party to your faith? You should be doing that. Like this is your thing, right? I don't understand. This is one of the things I like about the DCC metric when it comes to
that is.
healing,
I was going to bring that up. That's awesome.
It's if you're trying to heal someone that's diametrically opposed to your deity, you are treading on real. Even if it does work, it's not going to work as well. And boy, you're just opening that window for a consequence that's going to come. And so I think it's really important when it comes to magic, especially with divine magic, that it should be role played in accordance with the character's devotions. And we're going to be talking about moral and ethical next. And I think that's where it really does come in.
I agree with you, Crispy. And I'm going to tell you that we're both wrong, but I agree with you. And this is the example I'm going to cite. We're going through Rules Cyclopedia right now. And one of the things that really surprised me when I started going through it is Rules Cyclopedia is basic Dungeons & Dragons. So it's based on BECME. It's based on some 1970 whatever stuff. Or I think BECME's like 81 or whatever, right? Doesn't say anything in there about that clerics worship gods. It says that they follow they're part of it. We joked about the Teamsters. As long as they follow a cause. So while even myself, I say, nope, clerics and paladins must have a god. And that's the way it's always been. Unfortunately, it's not true. I just think it's the right way to do it, even if it hasn't always been.
Whether or not it's in the Rules Cyclopedia, we're right. Yeah. And if you're playing a cleric, you should be a religious. You should be a champion for your faith.
Exactly. Agree.
I'm a cleric, but I don't really have a. No, then you don't. You're not a cleric.
Oh yeah, you and I are on the exact same page. Go ahead, Connell.
What if you're a druid and there is no god of nature? Nature's just nature.
No, I would absolutely put a god of nature in that. I would absolutely insist on it. Like you'd have to, for the same reason that the cleric needs to have a real, clearly delineated. This is what it means to be an adherent. Otherwise, who's granting you that magic? Is it just the
planet?
trees?
It's the planet.
It's Gaia. Well, if it's Gaia,
Gaia's God, right?
Or Gaia. Then we're back to having a deity.
What if the planet produces its own? I'm going to use key. For example.
Well, are you talking like kind of like the Arthurian stuff, where it's where the dragon is the earth?
Yeah. But even people worship dragon. You know, you can turn a dragon to a god. A dragon could become a god in some earlier editions of Dungeons and Dragons if they eat their horde. But I'm just saying the planet produces its own power. If you worship, you are not, from birth, you are in tune with the waves and the woes of the planet. There is no deity. It's like Mojo or Mogo or whatever the living planet from DC. It's its own thing. And
that sounds like a distinction without a difference. Like what it would be can we define what a deity is then?
Well, I don't want to dive down this rabbit hole too far, but I think we can turn this back a little bit to the consequences. Then what is giving you the consequences if you're like, I don't feel like following the faith today. Like, you know, I'm just not, I'm not going to do my devotions that I normally do. Yeah. There's a tree growing in my backyard. I'll plant 2 tomorrow. Who cares? You know, like Like,
Well,
go ahead.
To answer one of Connell's questions there, I view druids kind of in the same way that I view monks. I see magic as kind of in three separate parts. There's arcane magic, which are, your wizards. They're essentially hacking into power. They found these little cheat codes and shortcuts where if I do these specific things, if I recite this formula and do this, hand gesture, I am able to harness power. Then you have your clerics who are using divine magic. They are directly serving a deity that is giving them power. There's a, kind of a back and forth relationship there. And then druids and monks, it is kind of a deep understanding of their own energy within them and then being able to manipulate it because you're so in tune with yourself. And druids, it's being in tune with nature and everything around you. So basically you are stepping into the naturally flowing currents of power and subtly redirecting them. That's how I view clerics and druids.
So I would look at that last two. Druids maybe a little step outside this, but I'd say, okay, so you got magic, divine magic, arcane magic, and psionics.
Kinda, yeah.
I mean, if you're talking internal power, whether it comes from your noodle or just comes from your, as Connell was saying earlier, your ki or your chi or whichever language you're using there, I mean, that's just essentially it's psionics.
Yeah, more or less.
Okay.
Fair enough.
All right. Anything else you guys want to say on that? We still got a couple more chats to go through.
Throwing a wrench into the
no, that's fine. Look, and this isn't to say that one Connell is wrong. Like Crispy and I'm in 100% agreement with Crispy, even if the rules do say something different. I absolutely believe that, I mean, we could have a whole episode on clerics and religion and faith in games like this. That's just not the purpose of today. But I agree with him 100%. But that doesn't mean. What's that? I missed that.
It's because I'm right. That's why you're doing it.
We'll go with that. Crispy's right. It's never me. It's Crispy. All right. Angzar says, one of the most basic truths of reality is that you can control your actions, but not the consequences. If a world is completely devoid of that, it loses immersion. And I had like 2 follow-up questions on that, but these guys had already knocked it out of the park where I didn't have to ask that. But it's absolutely right. Like, how does a world feel believable if you don't have consequences to it?
It doesn't.
You need consequences, good, bad. There should be something there that keeps the boat going in a general direction. It without it, just be chaos. It'd be a bunch of 4-year-olds in a room by themselves with crayons, and you walk in like, what the hell?
Okay, so what do you say about the people who are like, come on, guys, it's just a game. We're rolling dice and we're killing goblins.
Because I go back to my elevator pitch. The game is the world simulation. Like, that is the game. And so, like, if I was using Ryan's, I'm intrigued with Ryan's setting here. It sounds to me like an interesting take on the kind of the Freeport style of, or Lankmar or something, where there's lots of things happening in this. We're going to try to simulate that so that it feels real for everybody.
Yeah.
And that is the game. So it's not just simply rolling dice. That's how we're going to introduce the chaos into it and all of the other wonderful things that come with that aspect of it. But that is not the key component. The key component is the world simulation. At least that's how I pitch it to new people. And it seems to work better if, for me, my goal is I want immersion. I want in-character play. I want you to role play everything. I want you to role play in every circumstance, not just when you're buying stuff at the general store. I want role play 100% of the time. And so if we're going to be in that world simulation, then I think that frames it properly to really focus in on the consequences rather than, well, come on, guys, it's just that we're just here for kicks and giggles. If we want kicks and giggles, there's lots of other things we can do. This is something else.
Okay. All right, let's go to the next one here. Wait, did I already? Yeah, I already read that one. Boom. Law Dog for another $5. Thanks again, Law Dog. Appreciate that. Not all consequences are bad. They can be good or indifferent and neutral. And by the way, this wasn't the comment that got me to say what I said earlier. There's some other stuff going in chat, but this just kind of goes to it. Yes, literally everything you do is consequential. But what I like about this one is the reaction. You might think you've done something consequential and nobody cares. Or you might have thought you did something that's inconsequential, that to you is inconsequential, but to somebody else or some other faction looking out there or the mores of the land, you just now, you may have done something that's capital offense. But, or you could now be owed a life debt. Already Squirrel Hermits, but thanks. I'll put it up again because there's $20. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. It's got another one here. It's not a super chat. Chimerian says, wow, Ryan and Crispy managed to put more efficiently the thoughts I wish I could verbalize. Yeah, you and I, Chimerian, I think we're both kind of known for a little bit of verbal salad, a little bit of verbal vomit. It's okay.
I mean, I wouldn't say that.
At least not to our faces.
No, I'd say it to your face.
Law Dog for another $5. Again, thank you very much. Nice to see Crispy on the panel. Love when the 4D guys show up. They always bring quality insight and unique perspectives.
Well, that remains to be seen, but thank you very much. It's very kind.
Okay, I'm going to be the idiot here. What is 4D?
Can you do it quick? Can you do it quickly?
Real quick. What it is just in-character play that's based on a very high trust model, meaning that there's within certain confines, the players can help co-create the setting as we go. That's essentially what it is. It's in-character play. So we're all in character the whole time with a high trust that players can add within certain confines to the world to help flesh it out. That's it.
There's another YouTuber, Jade. I think you and him would actually get along because he's building his own world RP and he preaches in the same vernacular that you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jade and I, we're unfortunately, we're only 3D.
That's okay. 3D is fantastic. That's in-character play. That's what I'm looking for.
He's into, was that index card RPG, rule simple, all about RP and just building a world.
Yep.
All right. I have more to say on that, but that's not for today's conversation. So we will hit. So Mac Thompson has a question. Here's a question. Do y'all ever note the action in question, save the consequences for a time much later in the campaign? The thing that comes back to haunt a character, so to speak. Or do you try to have consequences squared up before the session ends? Now, I just want before these guys answer, I don't always put a question up there that people ask. Don't think that if you want to guarantee it gets up there, super chat it. But I thought this was a really good one for the purpose of what we talk about at the time. So, do you sometimes save the consequences, or do you just try to get them out of the way as quickly as you can?
I guess I'll start if that's fine with you.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I save them. Oh my God, they're nuggets. They are beautiful golden nuggets of future line RPG scenarios. Whatever it might be, from something like I said, helping the old lady across the stream, or starting a bar fight. It might be something small, but taking that and yeah, I remember you. ... Screw you. You're not going to get the deal that you want. I'm not going to give you the gold that you want, or variation. There's always consequences. Consequences should always be saved in a jar for later dates. They shouldn't be wrapped up at the end. This is not a Saturday morning cartoon, especially when you're running a campaign.
My take on this, I would say there are some consequences that should be proximate to the action. There are other consequences that are perhaps secondary or tertiary or even beyond. Those will trickle in as it happens. So I would say that it's not an either or. There are some times that there's an immediate proximate, and then there's other times that there's a lag. And I like the idea that the consequences from character actions will flavor future conflicts. And so when I spend a lot of time after a session talking about what happened, what I'm doing there is I'm trying to brainstorm in my head. I'm not necessarily sharing this all with players. What will be the natural result of that, or what complication does this introduce, perhaps down the road? But without the expectation that has to happen, because I don't want to force characters in a certain direction. So.
I have like a million questions. This segment's going on a little long here, but I've got to ask this one. one of the things that I've run into with game masters, especially from friend groups, people have known each other for a long time and can kind of, we'll just say, read each other's thoughts, is how to say it? They imply a consequence that doesn't necessarily make sense because they think they're reading your thoughts instead of what actually happened. How is it all of a sudden, okay, you killed some bandits on the side of the road. That's what you thought that they were. But really, one of those bandits was one of the princes, just in disguise because, he didn't want to be seen. All of a sudden, you get to the next town and you guys are under arrest. That's what you get for being murder hobos. Wait a minute, how the hell did anybody even know about this? How did this word travel so quickly? I've seen things like that. Again, this is when I was younger, or when I play and I see it on tables like next to me and so forth. Luckily, most of my groups weren't like that. But you get what I'm saying. Like, have you seen it where people try to implement the consequence way earlier than it should have been, or that even makes sense? Maybe the characters should have gotten by with being jackasses, other than maybe an alignment shift or something at that point.
Yeah, it's best not to force things. Like, so I don't like the idea of that, especially when I see that happen, Max, when I've either been in games where that happened, or if I made a mistake and did that. When I think back to those instances, I think what was happening was less fidelity to the world as it should be, and believable, and more of a, hey, I'm going to teach you guys a lesson.
Yes.
And I don't think consequences are best framed as I'm teaching you players to behave. That's it shouldn't be coming from that, because then it becomes more of a, I'm going to show you guys. And
I'm sure, as a matter of fact, I know 100% exactly what you said there has been me in the past. Not recent past, thank God.
Me too. I've done it.
I can picture things that I've done in the early 90s where I was like, yep, that was me.
Yeah, I was just trying to get even. So, yeah.
But you said it, the way you said it, though, was fidelity to the world. Absolutely love that. Go ahead, Connell.
There are certain ways, if this hypothetical, using your example, your party decides to kill a bunch of bandits.
You can make up anything. I'm just talking having news spread too quickly.
Right. I'm going to use that example because I can actually see how that worked. In the beginning of the night, your party's walking down the woods. They get attacked by bandits. One of them just happens to be a prince. They're murder hobos. They kill everybody. Well, once you kill everybody, of course, the party is going to loot them for whatever shinies that they have. They go to the next kingdom, or the kingdom they're going to. They start selling the loot because that's what you do with your shinies. And one of the items was the princess, and everybody knows that belongs to the
prince. Like a seal or something, yeah.
Something dumb, and that's how they get pinched. And I don't recommend doing it that way. But correctly in my head, that's how I would do that, trying to curve them away from the murdering hobo. But very recklessly, I think you should let it sit for a while. But if I was going to do it, that's how it would be done.
Okay. So Ryan, in your Nighthaven setting, have you had a situation where you've seen or accidentally, whatever, wow, the consequence just came out too fast?
So I try not to. I try not to do that because, like Crispy said, it is like that tends to come about really to be punitive.
Yes.
The thing that kind of helps me with that is I do out of session 1-to-1 time. So you play on Saturday, and then your next game is next Saturday. So it's 7 days between sessions. In that time, 7 days will pass in your setting. So the adventure stops for one night, and then whatever they did, there's now an entire week for the people of Nighthaven to hear things and for stories to start to spread. So really staying on top of just timekeeping and making sure that the passage of time makes sense outside of game really helps kind of police whether or not news is traveling too fast.
Okay. All right, we got a $20 super chat in from Doc Flamingo. If you guys missed the show last week, well, the video isn't live yet, but the video will be live beginning February, I think it is. But you can see him talk about troop play last week. It was a really good session. But he says, like in a film or a book, the key is establishing the reality level from the very start with an example so the players know exactly what they're dealing with. A lot of novels do that. A lot of absolutely movies do that for sure. As a premise, I agree. Thoughts?
Yeah, this is very important. This is how I try to communicate information about the world is in world. So yeah, they'll see maybe someone else's gets caught breaking the law, and now they're suffering the consequences of that. So they can see, well, that didn't happen to us, but we can see that the world does have mechanisms to enforce some kind of morality.
Sure.
Yeah.
Over on Rumble, I got a $20 Rumble rant over there. Sorry, I can't put it on the screen, but it's just not possible. One of my favorites from Grizzly Beardo. Thank you very much. One of my favorite tricks is what I call the fastest gun in the West trope. When the PC's rep hits critical mass, every killer is looking to make a name for themselves, start calling them out. Yeah, there was a Bon Jovi song from Young Guns 2 about that. Billy, get your guns, right? That's basically, I think that's, or is it Miracle? One of the songs is about that. Yeah, like, okay, you know what? You're top dog. I was just watching some videos today at lunchtime where it's like people like, I'm high school #1, ranked, blah, blah, blah. I could play against an NBA player, get smoked 11-0. It's stuff like that. But, it's like, I'll come after you. I'll come after the big dog, right? So, yeah, I think that's absolutely something that should be done. And this is something that I do poorly. That's right. I'm not a perfect game master. I do poorly. I'm very poor about having competing adventurers. It's because personally, I just don't like it. Okay, that's what it comes down to. But I need to utilize it more. So when the characters get lazy or they're just whatever, all of a sudden there's that other adventure group going for the same thing you are, or who's just ready to club you and take it from you when you come out all wounded, right? It's a cheap shot, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah, somebody might be coming after you, especially once you start making a name for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
All right, going back up. I've still got a bunch of chats to go. Thank you for all the super chats, guys. We're at 67 to 87. We're very close to a giveaway, and we're only in segment 1. That is awesome, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. That's great.
It's actually thanks to these guys down here. It has nothing to do with this idiot asking questions. I know that already.
It's Ryan. He's the celebrity. We all know it.
There we go. So I just want to make sure I'm not missing something. So yeah, I think I already did the. Yeah, did that one. Crafting Gamer says eventually the players get to 5 stars and the Dragon Guards come in.
Yep.
I don't know what that means.
5 stars is in Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah,
Is
Grand
what?
Theft Auto, I think, is. What
See, I don't play Grand Theft. Okay, got it. Okay,
I'm too old for that.
Well, no, I just. Well, never mind. It's all, again, whole different topic. But I know what it is. I don't play games like that. Okay, but yeah, that makes sense. I mean, well, what is it like in Skyrim or whatever? You club too many people, you get wanted in the town. Yeah. And thank you for the continued membership. I appreciate that. Weird Guy for $5 says, my trouble with my 7-year-old son is that they will ask for his character to do something insane that they cannot do, like a warrior can do magic. Wait, what? My trouble with my 7-year-old son is that they will ask for his character to do something insane that they cannot do, like a warrior can do magic. So they're asking him. Okay, I got it. Okay, was that to me? Were we talking about something that I'm sorry? Because I want to give Weird Guy the proper answer for his question here. He's paid $5, but I'm missing the context.
I think that's maybe directed towards me because I'm talking about gaming with kids more so than anything else. Which maybe that's a little weird, but it's the most experience I have. If I have a character or if I have a player who wants to do something insane that makes no sense, I will say, okay, try to cast that spell. And they'll roll the dice. Of course, nothing happens. But, man, you just got to try hard enough. Just give them the, okay, you can do it, but nothing's going to happen aspect of it. Or I want to jump off the table, onto the chandelier, up the stairs or whatever. Go for it. Roll that dex for me, please. And if they make it, awesome. Great. Now you're Jack Sparrow. If you don't, well, thank you for trying. Just not holding their hands, but letting them spread their more venturous wings, per se.
Yeah.
And if they pull it off, that's awesome. That's something that they're going to be talking about. If they don't, well, I tried.
Fair enough. Okay. Weird Guy came back with another $2. Thanks again, Crispy. Or not, sorry. Thanks again, weird guy.
You're welcome.
Tip to Crispy. Well, Crispy's giving me a whole ton of super chats today. That's my story. I'm sticking with that one now.
Great.
Crispy, you're on next week, whether you like it or not.
Now there we go. Thank you.
I think next week's is full already. But tip to Crispy: clerics are hardcore faithful nuts.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. This is I think we talked about this a little bit last week, and I won't dive down the rabbit hole. I think there's a little bit of a mistake in how we sometimes portray clerics. This is one of the reasons why I really like second edition, specifically Forgotten Realms. One of the few things I'm going to say nice about Forgotten Realms, or if you use the Priest's Handbook, which is there's a difference between a cleric and a priest. Cleric is a generalist. Priest picks a specific god. You can find exceptions to that. I'm just going by what the general aspects of them are. So I can see a priest being monotheistic, but I wouldn't have a problem with a cleric who prayed to Apollo for, say, strength, and then Aphrodite for some beauty, or maybe to bless a wedding or something, or I can't remember all the Greek gods. But anyway, I personally wouldn't have a problem with that as long as he stayed true to the pantheon and used the correct god at that time. As somebody who revered all the gods and understood that they all had a part to play, I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with that. But I also prefer especially priests to clerics. So
I would just say, because I'm right on this, that if your setting is polytheistic, then it would make sense to me that polytheism would be the norm. So what you described should be what happens.
Sure.
So I would say that I don't disagree with you at all. I think
but most people will still pick a god, so to speak. Yeah. Like I follow Apollo, I follow Athena, I follow Ares.
But if they do that, then what I would ask them to do is role play that. So like if they've picked one to the exclusion of all others, knowing that the other gods exist, then they have some kind of relationship there that they should be role playing, whether it's indifferent and they just don't care, or they think that that's laughable because that god is laughable, or they think that this god is antithetical to them, so they're always in opposition. I would just ask that they role play as someone of faith. Now, whether that's monotheistic or polytheistic, that's going to be a setting dependent thing, but they better be role playing as someone that has an opinion on it. They can't just be agnostic. So,
yep, I agree with that. All right, let's see. I read that one because it was a $20 one. Again, thank you very much, Doc Flamingo. I just want to make sure I think, because I got one more, and then we're running really long in the segment, so I do have to jump into the next one. I do appreciate all the chats, but we do got to get to the next segment. Some people here are on a little bit of a schedule. So, Law Dog for $5 more. Thank you very much, Law Dog. Agree with Crispy. Fidelity to the world is key. Every consequence shouldn't come with an egg timer that determines when it is due.
True.
Just imagine the person you insult today, and this is my family, my real dad's side of the family, they will hold on to that for their entire life. They'll talk to you all nice. They'll be your friend. They'll be, I don't know. I don't want to dive too far, but long story short, and then you need something 20 years later. Like, remember when? It's like, dude, let that go. Jeez.
Italians.
But
Irish.
But there are people like that. I mean, now my stepdad and my half brother, they're the exact opposite. I literally saw my brother chase after my stepdad with a hammer. 10 minutes later, they were working under a car. Like, you chase after me with a hammer, you're probably not going to be breathing the next day. Because I'm not joking. It wasn't just like, I hate you. It was chasing him around with a hammer, ready to club in his skull. Like, no.
Maybe that's their love language.
But that's what I'm saying is different people act differently. That can happen with consequences as well.
Well, and for anyone who has read Red Shadows, the Solomon Kane story, when Lelu just killed that girl, he thought he was just killing a random girl. He didn't think he was now going to be like bringing God's champion down upon him.
Maybe you should
how
murder
long
him.
that would take.
Right.
That's why, I don't try. I do. That's a horrible lot. I don't exactly do full Greek mythology stories, but I will add in aspects of it because a lot of these old Greek mythologies have more moral and ethics to them. They teach you that you do stupid shit, bad shit will happen to you. And with kids, it just it plays better.
All right. Well, let's throw this up on the screen here. Boom. Do you want to join? If you think you have some presence and charisma, the ability to educate and entertain, a good AV setup free from noise pollution, and an interest in discussing tabletop RPGs in this format, join the Some Rando RPG Livestream Discord. Link is in the description. By the way, I got a whole ton of upcoming segments that are filled up now, thanks to a whole bunch of people after the last episode signing up. Thank you, thank you, thank you. There are more coming. I've got another list about ready to pop soon. So, you see something there that you like, please sign up. If it's full, well, maybe we'll get you next time. But help us to get to know you, and maybe we'll get you on the show to talk about your experiences. And of course, if you enjoy this discussion, please like this video and subscribe to all the panelist channels, Substacks, which you can find in the description. All right. Let's jump right on into segment 2. We're going to start with Crispy on this one. So we're now in segment 2, we're going to be talking about moral and ethical consequences. So a lot of this may have already been expressed in the previous segment, but we'll dive into it a little bit more here, or we'll just move on to segment 3. I don't know. But Crispy, how do you address moral and ethical consequences resulting from character actions, and what impact do these consequences have on the game world and player engagement?
So my background in the hobby may have flavored my thoughts on this a little bit. Again, I didn't start with D&D. I started with Robotech and then Rifts and other things where alignment's handled a little differently. So while I don't insist that character players run characters that are Boy Scouts, I do insist that every character has some sort of defined concept of right and wrong. If you want to play an amoral character, that's not your character. I play the amoral ones, the psychopaths, those kind of things. That's my domain as the game master. So when it comes to this idea of right and wrong, so like the character should have an idea of what is right and wrong, and that should be flavored by the game world's cultural norms and laws and ethics. So it shouldn't exist in a vacuum. It should be informed by again, I'm going to keep coming back to Ryan's city because it's got me thinking. His city, this setting, would have some things that would culturally be accepted and other things that would not be culturally accepted. That's a really important concept for characters to exist within. Good conflicts will introduce some tension within that ethics. So that you have to decide from things. Maybe they're two good things. Maybe it's the worst of two bad things, or the better of two bad things. But I like that idea that the game world enforces its own ethics, like I mentioned earlier, and there should be behaviors that are culturally acceptable, that are okay, and other ones that are not. And I don't like this idea of a moral, a right or wrong free for all. I don't think it works very well. It breaks immersion for me. So what I do in my game, I've experimented with a lot of things, because this comes back to what my character thinks is right and good, and what my character thinks is evil. So this is just something, I don't know, you may want to experiment with this. What I would do for a while, and especially in long-term campaigns, before the game session, I would have given a lot of thought to what happened in the session before. And I would write a private note on a little index card, and I'd leave that as a private communication for the players when they showed up. And what was on that card was just a question in relation to what happened at this session before, and how that may or may not impact this character's concept of right or wrong, their morals. Is it something that happened that there is a little bit of a gray area? And I never asked for a response. It was not for me to quiz the player to say, well, okay, well, this happened, and I think that you've betrayed your alignment. Instead, I would just ask a question of, how does so-and-so, I use the character's name, of course, how does Johnny feel about this event? Does he still think that this is important? And all the idea behind that was just to invite the players privately. It was, again, not asking for a response. It was completely up to them to decide how their character responds, but it was to get them thinking about that concept of good versus evil. What do I think? How does this impact my morality? This is the other reason, morals and ethics, is why I personally like superhero games because my buddy Max Boivin hates them. And so we had him run in a superhero game just to
Yes.
troll him a bit. But the reason why I love Heroes Unlimited, which is in many ways a very broken game, and the reason I love the fact that it's broken and powers can be so abused.
Yeah, we don't insult Palladium here. I'm just saying.
I just love it. I love it because of that. I feel I see that as a feature, not a bug, because the game, a superhero game, is really about the ethics of your actions. Yes, you can destroy a full city block. You could kill these people easily. You could even kill the bad guys easily. But what does doing that imply for your concept of right versus wrong? Or you're playing a hero, so you may not be the I don't like it. I don't mind if someone's going to play the Punisher, or someone that's a little like, oh, I'm going to play Lobo or something that's a little on the edge. But even they should have some idea of what is right and what's wrong, and they exercise self-restraint. And that's why I like that internal imposition. Yeah, I could create a force field and bisect the guy's neck or whatever and just kill him. But because I'm a good guy, I have to try to be judicious in how I use these awesome powers to limit the fallout elsewhere. It becomes a question of morality. Superhero games are fantastic for moral questions and those ethical dilemmas. And for that reason, I really like them. And Max, my buddy Max, hates them. But oh well, we're still going to run them from time to time.
I would not succeed if I had superpowers. I would end up being a villain vigilante at best, because I'm of the mindset when it comes to criminals. Uncle Palpatine was right. Wipe them out.
Well,
and
that's fine. But there's always that risk of, I have this awesome power, but what about the collateral damage? What about the poor shopkeeper whose falafel shop is now completely, whatever it is.
I got you. No, you're right.
And now he's homeless and his family's going to go hungry. And a lot of it is that public perception too, because the other thing I like about superhero games is that there's usually this tension between how the population views you. Are you a dangerous vigilante? Are you a force for good? Well, it kind of depends how much you've impacted their morning commute. If you've destroyed their livelihood or their ability to make a living because you just pick up a train and throw it, well, now they can't get to work. Now I love that.
Well, I could have let the criminal just run free and you wouldn't have got to work anyway.
Exactly. But we're going to talk a little bit about the environment, and then some of this plays into the environment. But I do like the idea of just that private check on for the player to at least consider what is the impact for the character's alignment. How is their concept of morality changing because of what they've been party to, what they've seen, what they've suffered? And so those kind of conflicts are good because I love the idea of trade-offs. It's not just a win-lose situation. It's a trade-off. You have to kind of think of it that way. When I would recommend that game masters out there think of it not in terms of they did the right thing, they did the wrong thing. What is the trade-off here? How is that going to impact this concept of right versus wrong? And what's happening over time? And this is why your earlier question to me, Max, the Shauner method, do we just do one shots? We don't do just one shots anymore because we want to see that tension growing between that what is right and what is wrong in character.
There's a lot that Shauner and I very much disagreed on, but I think I'm much more in line with you, Mr. Max, and so forth when it comes to this. But I got to read a super chat here. It's been sitting baking for a little bit here. $20 super chat from Law Dog. This is about your idea about talking after the session. He says that's a really good idea. Stealing it.
Good.
See, you should have trademarked it. You could have sold it. Now he's just taking it from you.
You can't steal it. I'm giving it away.
By the way, I think that means we've met our goal, and that means we'll have a giveaway during segment 5 after all this is done. We're only in segment 2 right now, so if anybody's awake during segment 5, well, if you super chatted or you're a member, you should be able to be added. So thanks again, Law Dog. Appreciate that. And so I want to dive into this concept just a touch more, because I hear what you're saying about this is why I couldn't do the superhero stuff, because I think that in some regard might does make right. No, I don't want to say it that way. I think if you have the ability to stop something, you do it. And yes, there might be some consequences, but you know what? The consequences would have been worse over the long term if I hadn't stopped it now. So let's rip that Band-Aid off and let's whoop this dude. So how do you address player, this isn't about characters, about player disagreements over ethical implications of their character's actions? This could be an alignment issue. It could be like you're talking about the superhero side. Let's be honest. Palladium alignments are the best alignments in the game, in the world, if you're using alignments. I don't like alignments personally, but if you use them, Palladium's the best by far. It's just an example. The example I wrote down, you already put a good one, but let's add a couple to this. Killing goblin babies or prisoners of war. Because a player, and this is my experience, and this actually has happened in my games. Arguments have broken out over this of like, hey, this person is going to cause more problems later. Goblins are going to grow up to be goblins. And yes, I am one of those people that say goblins are evil. There's no exception to that. Deal with it. They might, there are other things you can do to make them interesting.
It's gnolls now, Max. Come on. It's
gnolls. No, sorry, gnolls, orcs, whatever, hobgoblins. But the POW thing is a really big one because, yes, anybody who's been in the military knows about the Law of Armed Conflict, Geneva Convention. You can't do that, but we can't tag them along with this because we're about to go somewhere we don't want these people. No, there's like this give and take. Are you morally or ethically or is it within your alignment, however you want to look at this, in the right to murder them?
So my solution to this is role play. So, and what I mean by that is simply that you or me personally as players may have strong feelings about this, but I'm not playing myself. I'm playing this character. And I insist on that. I insist that you play your character. I will not, as much as it may be tempting to do so, I will try my best not to come at a character and halt the game and break everyone's immersion in the world so that I have an in-depth philosophical discussion over whether or not it's better long run to do something or not. All I ask is that you stay and role play that character. Afterwards, we can have a talk about it and say, well, you know what? I really think that we should have just wiped him out because honestly, it's just going to be a bigger problem later on. So why don't we just take it on? That's fine for a discussion after the game session's ended. During the game session, just role play what that character would believe. This is why I insist that your character have a somewhat well-defined concept of good and evil, of right versus wrong. And then they play that. Afterwards, we can talk about whether or not really it should have been this. But if you're playing a character, Max, that has, let's say they have a hindrance or a drawback where they're more of a pacifist. Yeah, I know it's hard to imagine that any of us would play a pacifist in a role-playing game, but it does sometimes happen. And while you may feel like, no, you know what, it's better to just rip off the Band-Aid, as you said, but that's not how your character would play it. So just play your role play your character, stay in character. Afterwards, we could talk about like, oh, that was totally the wrong decision. I totally should have done this. Well, that's fine, but we're not gonna break. We're gonna, in my style, or the style I espouse and evangelize, is that you stay in character and you role play it. So that's my answer to you, Max. Is like, how do I handle a player? Well, I just insist that players stay in character, and then afterwards we can have a talk about it. Well, you're not playing yourself; you're playing this character. So
I almost have a bit of an opposite take of you, or I misunderstood what you were saying. At least in one aspect, I think that people in the real world think it's easier to kill than it actually is.
Sure.
And so, by saying you're not playing yourself, but your character's, if your character's doing the murdering and you're not, I agree with the argument, generally speaking, because unless you're a psychopath, in real life, Forbidden Lands is an example, and most of the Free League games actually has a mechanic in place for this. If you don't take the talent, the cold-blooded talent, you have to make a willpower test in order to see if you can actually go through with a cold-blooded murder of somebody in that regard. And I know a lot of people don't like mechanics for stuff like that. My guess is you probably don't like a mechanic for that either, because that kind of strips away a little bit of agency for that. But I
don't mind a mechanic. It's
okay,
fine.
fair enough.
Yep.
I stand corrected on that.
Yep.
I like that because I don't want to say it stops the murder hobo, but it really makes you think about it, because in real life, I know people say we've been desensitized, but how many of you have actually ever put a knife to somebody's throat? How many of you have actually pulled a gun and put it into somebody's face? How many of you actually, I mean, we can dream about it all day and all night. You got that neighbor that pisses you off. You got the guy down. How many of you actually done it? Yeah, I didn't think so. So, I mean, even bouncers, they might grab somebody and they fight only to the limit that they need to and throw people out, right? Mm-hmm. So I sometimes think that people make excuses. Like, now, folks in the military, how many of you people are in the military? This is a rhetorical question because I don't have an answer for this. I was in the military, but I was never exposed to this situation where you have to deal with those POWs, and it's going to slow your mission. You know you've got somebody coming behind you that can do this, but your mission is going to get slowed. Do you leave them here? Do you tell them to run? Do you say sit and hope they actually do? Do you treat it like Saving Private Ryan, where you don't kill him the first time, then he comes back and killed the guy that needed to be killed, but he comes back and kills one of your squad, and what's the right answer? And players, and this is the point that I'm getting to with all that. Players, you vet, Crispy, and I get this. I absolutely get this. You and Mr. Max, I hear you guys say this, and Rick, who's been on the show as well. You guys talk about this a lot, but not everybody has the luxury of vetting all of their players' cons, and they will sit there and, oh my God, rationalize and justify everything they've done.
Yeah, I know. I don't have an easy answer for that, Max, because it is a recurring problem. And that's why I'm very selective as to who's allowed in the game. So I got to see that you have role-playing chops. Otherwise, okay, I'm just not interested. And but you raise a good question. It's an excellent question. I wish I had a simple answer to you, other than what may sound to some of you as a flippant answer, which is, you got to stay in character here. But sure, you raise a good thing. Like, we've all had that. We've played in games. I'm sure my other fellow panelists have played in games like where the paladin's carrying around a bag of kittens just in case, I've got to change alignment quick, and we're gonna, the whole thing of, well, I just have to, how many try to game the system, such as
look, I have a bunch of notes written down. The paladin thing is another one. I didn't want it because we're going kind of long here, and I'm talking way too much. So, but sure, if you guys want to put this in the back of your head, and if anybody wants to address it, you don't have to if you don't want to. But the stupid idea of like, hey, paladin, go look that way. Oh no, what happened? No, that's just horrible role playing. But let's move this up. First of all, Ryan and Connell, do you have anything you want to add on to Crispy? What he was saying?
Sorry, guys, I've been talking too much.
Well, that's my fault, not yours. That's on me.
Mine can wait until my answer. Okay. So
yeah, I can wait.
Well, guess what then, Connell? You're up next. So I will just dive into you. That sounded gross. We'll move on over to you. And how do you address moral and ethical consequences resulting from character actions, and what impact do these consequences have on the game world and player engagement?
Ethics.
Doesn't it suck to have to follow Crispy?
Yeah. No,
oh, come on.
C'est la vie. I'm not really, to be completely honest, the best DM when it comes to ethics and morals. I don't believe in, with superheroes, going back to your superhero concept. I hate half measures. Most of my characters hate half measures. Everybody puts a little bit of themselves in the characters they build, make. I see it all the time with kids. I see it with adults. It's a natural hiccup. I don't know what it is, but we all do it. Now, with kids, it's not that difficult. You kind of explain what's going to happen if you do this. What's going to happen normally after the game? Let them know. Okay, you're trying to play Paladin. Congratulations, Paladin to me is one of the hardest classes to play in any system because you have to be beyond approach. You always have to do the right thing. Well, doing the right thing sucks. It has its moments where you're that light from heaven's coming down on you and you're glowing with righteousness. Then the other times you're just getting rained on from the shitstorm. It just is what it is. With adults, I kind of come down hard a little bit. I come down hard. Is like, well, I'm playing a paladin. You slept with a prostitute. That's not gonna fucking fly. Your deity comes to you in your dream or right afterwards, and I'm like, listen, bub, this is what's gonna happen. So it really depends. I know this is not the best answer, but it's based on case by case scenario how I handle it. Because me as a person, I'm more or less morally flexible. I can see the argument that Batman should kill the Joker years ago and just be done with it. How many people would he have saved? But Batman doesn't kill. Well, if you put the bullet in fucking Joker's head, how many people would he have saved? And then with superheroes, it's a lot easier to have this conversation than with fantasy. I think fantasy games, you can punish them via losing alignment. You're no longer a paladin, or paladins are probably the easiest to pick through on this one. Druids, they get their connection to the force of nature, whatever, is just clipped. They have to go meditate in the forest for X amount of time. Like I said, I don't have really good answers to this one. It's just a case by case scenario. And at the same time, I'm trying not to laugh my fucking ass off, to be honest. And
so I want to go back to because I'm hung up on the whole paladins can't sleep with prostitutes thing. Why? And I'm asking this in all because that is a consequence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why not?
Well, depends on what feat you go with it for 3.5. If you take the feat of chastity, there's no extra time.
That makes sense. Got it.
And depends on what if your deity is all about, go forth and multiply, okay. But if your deity is like, no, you only person you sleep with is your future wife, because okay,
so no, you answered my question there. Yes, if somebody's following a god that insists on monogamy, then 100% I agree with you. But you gotta understand that yes, most societies had some sort of laws about adultery. They didn't have so many laws when it came to just outside sex, other than the purpose of purity of the daughter, so that you could marry them off. So, look at the Romans, look at the Greeks, look at the Babylonians, look at all of them. Even if there were laws on the books. Now, what does that mean for a paladin? Well, this is a fantasy setting. Do you really want to go the Greek route where they sent their boys to patrons? Now, would that be a sin? It's a Christian sin, but is it a paladin sin in a fantasy setting? That's the only reason I'm asked. That's the only reason why I'm bringing this up. I have zero issues with anybody saying, no, in my game world, that's a sin because we basically conform to Judeo-Christian values, yada, yada. I'm in. I agree, but I want people to consider the setting. I think Crispy was saying this, and actually Ryan was saying this as well to some degree, if not these exact words. The setting is going to dictate this.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Max. The ethics, concepts of right and wrong don't exist in a vacuum. They're informed by the cultural norms of the setting. So if in the cultural norm of the setting, the oldest profession in the world carries no stigma, then it doesn't make sense that the paladin would be punished for something that is just considered normal or not taboo. If it is considered taboo, then yeah, it would make sense for them to be punished or to have some kind of, maybe it's a case where there is no established right or wrong on this particular topic, in which case it's really up to the character at that moment to decide. And then, it doesn't exist in a vacuum is my point.
Agreed. After I read the super chat, I want to come back because we're talking about consequences. I think Crispy makes a really good point right there. Definitely does not exist in a vacuum. But related to that, paladins can't sleep around because there's no birth control. A lawful good paladin wouldn't risk fathering a child he wasn't around to care for and raise. What if it's a communal society?
I just had a great idea, I think, Law Dog.
Oh, and thank you for the $20, Slowdog. Appreciate that.
Wouldn't
Go
that be
ahead, Chris.
awesome to role play that? Like you've sired this boy, and now he's your responsibility. And how are you going to raise this child? Like you're lawful good. You will accept the fact that he is your responsibility. What is that going to look like? I think that'd make for some fantastic.
And maybe that's why the church is part of your punishment, because remember, paladins, even the highest level paladin has to listen to a first level priest. And maybe the priest is like, to atone, I'll get you in a second, Connell. To atone, you are now going to do these services for the church. Kind of like, I forgot what it's called, the Trials of Hercules, right?
Yep.
Maybe not to that extent, but you get the idea of it. In the meantime, the church will care for the kid, make sure that the mother and the child are taken care of, but you are going to do these things now. This is your atonement. I could see something like that, absolutely.
Or you become lone wolf and cub, but for Jesus.
Sure,
also,
yeah.
The right answer.
That just makes I am the DM that doesn't allow modern gods into his campaign. If that person is being worshipped, he has no place in my campaign world, because I'm not going to listen to people argue.
Well, I don't mean literally. I mean like.
Well, I know, but I've ran into that a few times. I've actually ran into people's like, I want to be a paladin for the Christian God. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, but no. And if a paladin depends on the deity of choice, it's like, go forth, don't care, just make sure your child ends up in one of our churches and it's a future cleric, priest, soldier of the faith. Drop it off and walk away. I mean, there's ways around it, but
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't trying to grill you completely on that. The point that I was making is because we're talking about consequences. Like, how do you drive home that there should be a consequence for that? Do you make sure that people know that, hey, the God's good, follow Christian ethics? Well, what if you're playing with somebody else at the table whose ethics, Kama Sutra ethics,
Right. Most tables I run, I'll use the D&D Pantheon.
Sure.
And it just really depends on the deity's thought processing on how am I going to deal with.
I played a priest of Lyra. That's a forgotten realms god. That's all about parties and promiscuity.
Right. It's like, okay, being a murder hobo. What if me as a DM wants to play? I mean, let's say Ryan's campaign. I'll just go with Ryan because I know him. Sort of. I want to be a paladin of St. Cuthbert from 2nd edition, which is you're basically a cleric of murder hoboing, because I will not allow evil to live in my sight. Therefore, you're just knocking off everything that's evil. It doesn't matter if it's gobos or humans or anything in between.
Excellent. No. You now bring up a really. I don't know anything about St. Cuthbert. I'm guessing that's Greyhawk.
It is.
Okay, sorry, I didn't do the Greyhawk stuff. I did pretty much everything else. But if that is true, then you would become quickly target number one for anything you come across, because they would know this. The Grumsh, or whoever the evil god in Greyhawk happens to be for the hobgoblins, goblins, orcs, and so on and so forth, he's going to let it known to his kin out there, those shamans, witch doctors. Hey, you see the guy with the glowing armor, or the dude acting holier than thou, or whatever? That's the one you take out first, because he's not going to let a single one of you live. And all of a sudden, what are the consequences there? You get dogpiled. Crispy?
I was just going to say a little bit in opposition to Connell, not in opposition, just a different take. I do play quite often in modern settings, and actual faiths come up a lot, and they make for great role play elements. It's really good. It came up quite a bit in our in the superhero game we were running. It allowed me to introduce kind of like this interesting Greek Orthodox archbishop, and it was very interesting. And it because I game with adults, it's not. It doesn't become this kind of slapstick, or again, we're trying to stay in character the whole time. It's actually quite interesting. I don't personally, I don't see any problem with it. I can see how someone would be like, oh, got to walk on eggshells. As a man of faith myself, I've never felt that way. But I play with adults. that are more or less well adjusted. I mean, Mr. Max claims that he's not well adjusted, but I think he's pretty good.
This is not a jab at you or anybody who gets to vet their players. More power. Make sure you get the table that works for you and have a mutual thought processing. At a game shop, I have horror stories with dealing with adults.
Yeah.
Not so much with kids, but with adults.
They go figure, right?
Exclude them.
Yeah.
It's so much easier.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's move on over to Ryan Howard over there, so he finally gets a chance to answer the question. Ryan, how do you address moral and No, actually, the chat that you guys have going on, it's great. I got to temper myself down because I have like 8 more questions I wanted to ask you guys, but we'll never get through the segment if I do that. So maybe I'll bring them up later if we have time. But Ryan, how do you address moral and ethical consequences resulting from character actions, and what impact do these consequences have on the game world and player engagement?
Yeah, so you have kind of 2 levels of consequences. You've got the laws of the land that you're playing in. So, like the Night Haven has a whole set of laws that I give to the players. You're not allowed to wear armor within city limits because, if you walk into a medieval city wearing armor, they're going to think you're invading. So you violate those, you're going to face the, the consequences of the law. But then there's kind of the higher one. And this is where you get into alignment. What is alignment? And if you look at kind of the way that alignment was originally laid out, you are literally cosmically bound to certain actions or certain views of the world based on your alignment. If you are lawful good, you are a champion of law and good. Basically, you're a cosmic chess piece in this kind of greater game involving gods doing battle in their realm. So when you act out of alignment, you were literally acting out of like the purpose that you were put on this world to achieve. You are rebelling against your very nature and your very like created essence. And that's where kind of like your crazy consequences are going to come in. So if you're a lawful good paladin and you start violating your oath, it's not just hey, your god's mad at you, or even like you're going to lose your power. It's like you are now cutting off pieces of yourself. You are severing yourself from your connection with your deity. So like, yes, you're going to fall and turn into like, a fallen paladin or an anti-paladin, however you want to parse that out.
Fighter.
You're also going to be like doing your soul harm, and you're probably going to have some of that like DCC style corruption where your health starts to fail and you're not as strong as you once were. You kind of like shrivel up a little bit. And the more you cut yourself off from this purpose that you were given.
Do you mind if I jump in on this for just a second? Because sorry for interrupting, but what you're saying there is I want to tie it into Dungeons and Dragons for just a second. Because people complain, at least with like AD&D second edition, where if your alignment changes, you lose 2 levels. Well, how do you just forget stuff? It's not forgetting stuff. It's being unsure of who you are. It's everything he's saying over there. It's not being cosmically aligned, so to speak. You're not being who you're supposed to be. So no, you didn't forget how to use a sword, and it may be completely unconscious, but your ability to do that, you're not as focused. You're not who you're supposed to be. And he's explaining it wonderfully well, why you suffer level loss. Like, well, it's stupid. You just don't forget stuff. Well, it's not about forgetting. It's about not being who you're meant to be.
Yeah. And it's also like, you can call it the yips, or you could call it, in like more extreme terms, shell shock or PTSD. But like every time you draw that sword, you get that image of that terrible thing you did, where you like killed a child or whatever it was that caused you to lose a level. And so maybe that's, hindering your ability to fight. Now you have to work to overcome it. When you push back against your alignment, when you act outside of it, again, you are violating like you're essentially violating your created nature. And this is one of the reasons why, and Crafty Matt dropped this in chat earlier, there are some people who say only Christians can truly understand D&D, because this is something that's fundamental to Christianity. It's Christian morality that to sin is to violate your to violate the image of God that you are created with. Whether or not you agree with that, that's a whole can of worms that
But it is the basis of it's the philosophical basis for the alignments in the game.
Yeah, but like that's what we're dealing with here. These are the gravity of the consequences that you're dealing with when you violate your alignment, or when you do something kind of cosmically wrong.
Can I ask Brian a question?
Please, by all means.
So when someone violates their alignment in Nighthaven, is that I'm really intrigued with this description that you give. It's violating a core tenet of someone's being, and that's going to result in a crisis for that. Is that a mechanical thing, or is that more of a role play thing?
So, because right now Nighthaven is just a setting, that will depend on whatever system you're using to run it. I am developing, and I'm very early stages on this. I'm developing my own game system, and my intention is fully to make it a mechanical consequence.
Oh, okay.
Violating your alignment.
Got a $20 super chat here from Law Dog. Again, thank you, Law Dog, for the super chats. In Palladium, I penalize alignment violations with an insanity save. Okay, if you fail, you get something like PTSD, alcoholism, etc. There's a great insanity chart. If you've ever played, for the folks who play Palladium, they know this. There's amazing insanity charts in the game. Love them. Not saying he's using it, but just it's already kind of baked in, so I love it. When you violate your core values and principles, that thing haunts you ever after. Yeah, I can see that. I also do believe, and you guys can tell me what you think about this, but I do believe in some sort of atonement or coming to peace with what you've done at some point.
Sure.
Yeah, you can do a penance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
My style, I would lean more on the role play element of it than on the mechanical side of things, but I expect players to be in character enough to impose their own limitations. Like, I just feel terrible. Is there an actual mechanical aspect of that, or they just feel awful for having missed the mark, and their character is going to behave informed on that terrible crisis that they're going through, whether it's maybe they're having a crisis of faith, even like, what does this mean? So I like the role play elements that you're talking about there, where it's not just a mechanical impact. It comes back to that core concept of what does the character believe is right or wrong. And if you're now questioning that, then that should manifest it out in what the character's actions are. I don't know anymore. I'm thinking of all those, those examples in fiction of, you can probably think of some that, the hero that had something terrible happen and now he's just not sure, and he's lost his way, and his whole mission is now compromised because he's just not sure. I don't know what does this mean? Like, I recently watched a Christian Bale movie, Equilibrium, again. Have you ever seen that?
Movie. Love that.
So great film, fantastic film. And you can see these clerics, as they come off their dose, even for a little while, they start to question everything that and you can see it starts to manifest in what they're doing, even though it's essentially a death sentence to come off the dose. But how can we, like, I like that as a role play element. That's why ethics and morality is such a key component in the games that we run.
And real quick before Connell, this will be quick. I'm dropping a link here in chat. I don't know if it showed up or not.
There's just put it in the private chat, and I'll make sure that it gets posted. There's
an article on my Substack called "The Christian Wargamer" or "The Christian Role Player" that kind of addresses the whole Christianity and role playing thing from my perspective. So if you want to engage with that, do that over there. That's all I have to say about that. So sorry, Connell.
No, you're fine. I don't have a problem per se with the character suffering from uh, shell shock or post traumatic stress disorder, where every time he picks up a blade, he sees the massacre or the whatever he did as clear as day. That is great. I actually might steal that one, to be completely honest. Alcoholism, some of my best characters I've ever played or seen played were all alcoholics, so I'm kind of iffy on that one.
So, my issue with alcoholism is this: why do my dad, my real dad, was an alcoholic. I've lived around a number of alcoholics. They did not function well in normal society. Oh, of course, they thought they did, but they did not function well in normal society. Maybe they could pass it off walking down the street. Maybe they could pass it off certain aspects at the job, but there were aspects of their life that didn't work. There's got to be, if you're a true alcoholic, not just somebody that has, a six-pack after work or whatever and falls asleep in your lazy boy, there's got to be some sort of negative consequences for that, or it's not really alcoholism.
I agree. I mean, I will even argue the concept of a functioning alcoholic, I think, is nonsense. I agree. But we're talking about, there's classes, the monk class. I don't know when it came to be a thing, but it's called the Drunken Monk. I think it might have been after a Jackie Chan movie, but it is it is a variation of monk that you can play. In literature, I could think of a couple different nights from Shakespeare, Flagstaff. I might be wrong on his name, but he was an alcoholic, and he still did good at the end, for the situation. I just think keeping the real world out of RPG is rough. It's hard, but I think if it's with the alcoholic monk or a paladin who's a little bit of an alcoholic, if it's played correctly, respectfully per se, not a joke, but actually played correctly, I don't see the harm in it. With it being,
no, but you said you played a bunch. I just wanted to know where the consequences were for that, or was it just fun time? Because drunken style kung fu isn't actually a drunk monk. It's somebody who moves his body like he's drunk. He's basically fooling you, making you look like an idiot.
In 3.5, I think even in Pathfinder, you are actually required to drink.
Okay, so that's a fantasy take on it. That's fine. I mean,
right. When
kung fu was my thing back when I did martial arts. So
I get it. I truly understand. It's just it's a catch-22 with some of these aspects. You don't want murdering a hobo barbarian. Well, you're playing a barbarian. He's not smart enough to know right or wrong, or is he? Paladin shouldn't sleep around unless the paladin is
okay, but let's use the barbarian thing. And I know D&D's changed this, unfortunately, but one of the shticks of barbarians is supposed to be that they hate magic and all magical tools and implementations and so forth. They got rid of that now, which makes the barbarian useless, just a grumpy fighter. But when you put that in there, okay, let's talk consequences. Because I actually wanted to get into this moral stuff a little bit more. You've got a barbarian in your party, and you have a wizard in your party.
Oh.
Go! Because now... So I'm going to actually ask you guys a question here. You guys can answer. Whoever wants to start it can answer. But let's use that barbarian and that magic user concept just to move it forward. What strategies do you use to introduce moral dilemmas that feel meaningful and relevant to the characters?
I'd like to take this one first, and I'm going to say something kind of actually very controversial here. Your party is under no obligation to actually get along. And what I mean by that is really every single initial adventure there is a treasure at the bottom of this hole. And all of us want it for our various reasons, but none of us can go get it by ourselves because we're weak first level characters. We all have varying specializations that could, if we work together, we might be able to actually pull this off. And at the end of this, we can all go our separate ways, or we can continue working together. So with the barbarian and the wizard, the barbarian is never going to trust that wizard. And he may even want to cut his head off while sleeping. But the barbarian also knows that 5 of his people went down there, and one of them came out with half of his face melted off with acid, and another one of them got turned into a statue, or something. So he knows there's some magic down there, and if anyone is going to help him get past the magic, it's going to be another magic man. Maybe there's something that he can do to nullify it, or at the very worst case scenario, he'll put the wizard in front of him when the fireball trap goes off or something like that. So that's how you get those two things to function. We don't like each other, but we need each other for the time being. And then afterwards, we can settle whether or not I'm going to cut your head off with my battle axe.
Okay. Not my style of play, and you actually answered one of the questions that I didn't even ask yet with that, but absolutely a viable style of play. I would like Crispy, and I'm specifically asking you because you vet your groups, and I'm thinking you might have a little bit different take
I do.
than that.
Yeah.
I'm probably more in line with what you're going to say, but I'd like to hear your commentary on what he said.
Yeah, so I appreciate Ryan's comments there. I tend not to think in terms of class. Okay, so I don't think immediately, it doesn't come to my mind that the barbarian and the wizard must be at odds because of what I'm more focused in on is what that particular character. So that character's it shouldn't just be completely determined by class. In other words, let's say that your barbarian, his brother's name is Raceland, and he's a wizard.
What an example. Okay. I was thinking that too.
so what my point is simply that I encourage players to not simply think of, I am this class. You're not a class. You're what we're pretending is an actual character in a simulated world. So you will have complex interactions with people. It shouldn't just simply be a boilerplate kind of, okay, well, the rogue is always the untrustworthy one, or the wizard's always the bookish one. I do think that there's room for other types of interesting interactions, and I'm sure that Ryan has that in his games too. I'm not trying to strawman you, sir. I just don't immediately think, well, the wizard must be opposed to this, or but maybe they aren't.
But that was the intent of the original barbarian. That's the only reason why I brought that up. Because Dragonlance, you mentioned Dragonlance. Those barbarians were different. The Plains, Riverwind, and Goldmoon and Riverwind weren't but everything across Dragonlance isn't the same as normal anyway.
Sure. But my point is simply, I don't go with, well, the trope is this. I don't accept the trope is, and I acknowledge that the history of the game would automatically assume, dwarf, elf don't get along or whatever it is. And that's fine. Maybe that in the setting that should inform how characters behave. But I don't think in terms of classes when it comes to this interaction between party members. I think it's more people are more complex than that usually.
And what I would say to that, Crispy, is what is a class?
Yeah. So this is a good question.
And to me,
well, guess what we're going to have? I think that's next week. Class versus skill based.
Well, just to summarize, a class is a summary of skills and training. And then in the case of the barbarian, I actually don't like a barbarian as a class because a barbarian describes a style of upbringing to me, not a specific profession. Right. But it's training and skills that you've acquired to kind of perform a certain function. And part of that may be a certain disposition to the cleric or the paladin. They have a moral code, and so they're not going to be okay with the thief who got to eat to live, got to steal to eat, to quote Aladdin. They're not going to agree with that mindset, and so there's naturally going to be some friction there. And so I agree wholeheartedly with what you say there, as there's room for complexity, but there's also this underpinning of how were you brought up, how were you raised, and how were you trained that comes along in a lot of cases with the class that you're playing.
Sure. I can accept that. I suppose in my view of it is there is the training aspect, right? Like there's the occupation. This is what I do. That probably does inform on some level the personality, but it's not training specific for personality.
Yeah.
Like you still have your own motivations. One fighter is not interchangeable with another fighter in my mind because they have different motivations. It's not, okay, this is the guy holding the shield and the stick and that's all that matters. And when they're just interchangeable, I don't like games like that because it doesn't feel as believable to me.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
So, and you know that's fair. That's actually one of the arguments that'll probably come up next week is that class-based games, so to speak, I mean, they're meant to play on those tropes, right? I mean, that's part of what they're about, where a skill-based game may be more amorphous. We'll get into that more next week. I think I'm in between you guys because I absolutely am the type of guy that setting trumps everything else. Yeah. And I do think that setting informs. Now, can you take a barbarian and have him hate all magic and just kill all wizards? Sure, he's not going to live long. That's going to be a very low-level barbarian, right? On the flip side, is he going to, maybe he'll be like, you know what, I'm going to go find some other people to go get this artifact instead of Ryan's group, because I'm not going with that wizard, in there. And I could see some that'd be like, I'm doing this. Okay, I can do this. Because personality types, I agree with you, Crispy, on that. But I do think that those tropes are important because they also in class-based games, they tend to give the mechanical bonuses for it. This is why I don't agree with the Dwarven Wizard, from Victor. Victor, if you're out there, because they have so many bonuses against magic. Literally using magic is a 20% chance of failure. It doesn't make sense for them to be wizards at all. Okay, so I think that those tropes do inform the class, or the class tropes inform the character to that degree. And I guess that's the point that I was kind of making here. And I know, Connell, you haven't talked in a while, but I want to go back to the original question because you guys made some very valid points in there. And what's great is the people out there watching are either going to agree with Crispy, going to agree with Ryan, or they're going to agree with somewhere in between. And that's the way it's supposed to be. But what strategies? I'm going to let Connell answer first, but if you guys feel you already answered it, that's fine. But if not, come back in. What strategies do you use to introduce these moral dilemmas that feel meaningful and relevant to the characters? Basically, do you throw there are goblin babies there? What are you going to do?
This goes back to what I said earlier about with a gray render. A gray render is a hulkish creature that lives out in the woods. They're basically a vegetarian. Their alignment is just neutral. And what is the player going to do? What is the players are going to do? Are they just going to say, "Ooh, look, let's go kill it," or am I? And let's just keep on walking. If they kill it, it's probably going to kill them at first or second level. To be honest, it's just it's got too much going on. Or if they decide to let it go, and I happen to, like I said, have a druid in the party, maybe after a couple levels per se, they come across it again, and it starts following the druid around as a makeshift companion of a druid companion. Yeah, there's no rules for it, but I'll figure it out. I'm a DM. I should be able to do this. But when it comes to things are just outrightly evil, and this is what's going to get me in trouble with 5th edition's new run on how they think of hags and a few other classes, races or species, what the hell ever you want to call it. Some things just need to be put down. If you come across a tribe of goblins and you knock all them down, and you see a nursery of gobos, yes, you should put them down. Because they're not, you can't. Somebody said it earlier. You can tame a wolf into becoming a dog, or you can more or less tame it to a certain degree. You can't tame goblins. You can't tame.
Goblins aren't dogs. You can't tame.
Yeah,
I think that was the comment.
Evil species, races out there that just will never be good. I'm so freaking sick of. Driz was a good draw. He was one. And he should have been killed at birth using, the drow thought processing. He should have been. Anyways. So I don't, ethics and morals on that one is, it's just a rough go. Okay. I mean, I don't know where the right answer for that is.
Okay, now, well, let's move. I'll move it over to Crispy and Ryan. Then, unless you guys already feel you answered that well enough, how do you inject Ryan, these more, or do you, and how do you introduce moral dilemmas?
I let the players do it. Okay. I don't. Inevitably, there's going to be something that comes up. I do a lot of random tables. And so inevitably, there's going to be something that comes up that players are going to feel differently on. I don't intentionally try to stack the deck in favor of, all right, let's see some blood here at the table. I I kind of step back and I let them sort it out amongst themselves, and then I adjudicate. I very much approach it as a referee in that way. It's not my job to put my thumb on the scale. It's my job to, okay, you want to do this and you want to do this. Here's how we're going to play that out. Because any artificial drama that I inject is not going to be as fun or authentic as what they bring themselves. And this is, something that I think Crispy might actually end up agreeing with me on. If you've got two players that are actually playing in character, if they both fully believe polar opposite ideas, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to throw gasoline on that fire. They're going to do it themselves.
Exactly. This, I think Ryan has absolutely hit it out of the park with that answer. When everyone stays in character, these differences, these moral and ethical issues are introduced by the players as it should be. I don't like the idea of a game master that's using emotional manipulation to try to create a dramatic scene. That should be coming from the players themselves as they stay in character. When I do introduce a conflict, and I always want players to be in character and that those characters are thinking about their concept of right and wrong as it pertains to things, what I'll sometimes do is I'll have the in the world, so within the fictional world, I'll try to make the best case I can for both sides of an issue. So I'm not trying to direct them. I want you to do this. Oh, well, it sounds like this because Crispy spent so much time with this particular NPC or this political figure or whatever that there's a right decision here. No, I'll never. I try not to do that in isolation. I'll try to have someone take the opposite side and argue it as best I can, so that it's not clear which one should we go. It becomes a player character decision. But I think Ryan's answer, I 100% agree with you, that really when you're in character, these sorts of questions of right and wrong and conflicting views within the party, that should come organically from the players themselves.
I love this triangle that we make here. Because I agree with you 50% of the time, I agree with you 50% of the time, and yet I and these last two things, I'm kind of in the middle of you both because I do like injecting that moral stuff into the games, but I don't do it to target a player. I do it to target the group to see how they react. And yeah, absolutely, I'll put that in because I want them to make a decision. This isn't to judge them. Okay, you did this. It's literally to put something in front of them that makes them think about the world deeper. That's how I see it anyway. But ultimately, they're free to act how they want. I even put more rules on. No, this is getting too far in the weeds. I'm not going to go into this. We can talk about this some other time. But go ahead, Connell.
When I want the character or the players to, let's say, bond, I will use emotional you said it. I'm having
I'll put a conundrum in front of them. I think that's kind of what you're saying as well.
I'll do the Coulson effect. I'll kill one of them off. I'll have a bad guy that's like freaking overpowered just come in, early levels and just knock one of the players off the board. I roll a dice. Yeah, you're saying don't do it, but it tends to work. The Coulson effect tends to work. And
if I make a character and you kill him off just for the purposes of killing him off, I won't be sitting at your table again. If I do something stupid and get him killed off, I will. Then that's my fault, and I have no problem.
It's a random roll. I don't say, well, I'm going to kill you off, but it's a random roll, and it gets the party somewhat more in link with each other's. Where if you got two characters are fighting over the rights of freaking goblins, I think they're both idiots. But have a goblin kill one of the other players, that argument is now it's like all goblins must go. So,
Well, wouldn't that mean that one character should leave the party then?
no, because I still need their $5.
Yeah, but I'm not going to sit around while you're killing goblin babies.
Then that's on you. That's very much on you. If you don't want to, well, you don't get the XP. I still use XP.
No, I'm not talking as a player. I'm talking as a character.
That's what I'm talking about. You're not taking part in it.
Yeah, but XP isn't something that characters know about.
That's fair. Then you're going to have to deal with the rest of the party because eventually, no, not eventually. There's going to be one character's like, why didn't you come in and help us fight whatever? Why? I thought this person or this creature had rights and we were just being horrible people. And they will kind of police themselves in that situation. So, like I said,
weird. I love chat. So, by the way, I've been reading all the comments. I'm not putting a lot on the screen, and I don't have time to star everything. But that one was just funny. No, I get, and all I'm trying to do, Connell, is I'm not trying to say you're doing anything wrong or anything like that. I want to put out that this is supposed to be about consequences, and there are consequences to making those decisions.
Right, and I get that. I just. This is where I'm going to use intelligence or wisdom and just shut up. And hey, let's move on to the next question.
Okay, do you guys have any? I got some chat to go through, but anything that you guys want to follow up on the moral? And I mean, personally, I'd like to dive a little bit more into how to put moral dilemmas in front of folks. But since nobody here does that, can't really do that, so we won't. But anything else? As we say in the Air Force, any saved rounds on the table here, or should I hit some chat?
I'm good.
All righty, hitting chat. Let's go back to where I don't remember where we dropped off on this. Oh my God. I know we did that one. I think did I read this one already about fidelity, Crispy?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure because it's super chat. They are owed. Thank you for the membership, Cal. Appreciate that. I know I mentioned Law Dog stealing it. All right, Dirty Dwarf, this isn't a super chat, but anything that pats me on the back, I'm going to put up on the screen of the channel. Been watching your Back Me videos. We just started covering the Rule Cyclopedia, and it's interesting because I'm an AD&D 2E guy, and what's going to be fun when we hit 2E is we've already found one. Somebody got all pedantic on one of our Rule Cyclopedia videos where I said, well, in AD&D 2E, or it's not like AD&D 2E because this is what we did. That rule literally does not exist in 2E. It's a house rule that I've been using just forever. And it's going to be fun when we get there to find out how much of it I use raw and how much of I house ruled over the decades of running that game, right? But rules, I'm even learning stuff in Rule Cyclopedia because I have no exposure to it. Other than the books, never played it. Well, I either played it or BX back in 1983. Do you think I remember from when I was 10 years old? No. So I know very little about it. So we're kind of learning it on the way, yet we also understand it's Dungeons & Dragons, so it makes sense to us, right? So just the nuances are a little different. So it's been fun. It's been really fun to cover Rule Cyclopedia so far. Crafty has been a member for 48 months. That's right, Crafty. I found the 4, and there you go. You got the 4 icon. It's like, hi, wow, 4 years, time flies. Well, it's playoff February, so you guys will see me again after the 20th. Go Irish. Who are the Irish playing this? Is it Texas? I think they're playing Texas.
So. I got money on it.
I almost kicked Ryan off the show after what he said in relation to that. I hate Ohio State. Gotta hate Ohio State. Michigan won again. Ha ha.
Well, who's still in the playoffs?
That is fair. Oh, Michigan's dude. The Gophers should have beat Michigan this year. It's just actually my team, but yeah.
We're beating Texas right now.
Oh, is it on right now? Crap.
Yeah.
Every time I was streaming during the Gopher game last week too. Anyway, Law Dog, I read that again. So that's the Paladin sleeping around. Written Lies had a comment here. He says, do not have out-of-game morality conversation during the game. Don't have any out-of-game conversations during the game.
Yeah,
exactly.
I can agree with that.
That's interesting coming from you, Ryan. And I know it sounded like an insult. I didn't mean it that way. But because I think I picture you as more of an old school type player, which is to some degree a little bit more beer and pretzels.
So
we'll get to you in a second, Connell.
I like old school games, but again, like cards on the table here, and I've made this admission on the show before. I came to role-playing games as an actor. I have a theater
okay.
background, and I've been a professional actor before.
Hmm.
I like role playing in character. I like thinking about, you know, essentially what does my character care about right now, and I like having that separation. I also don't like wasting time, so
Exactly.
I'm, while we're all here, let's all focus on what's going on in the game. And so, like,
Okay.
I like old school games, but I'm not a beer and pretzels gamer at all. Like,
Right on.
people who like to play that way annoy the crap out of me, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Me too. No, I'm with you on that. So okay, I find that interesting in a good way. So, Connell, what did you want to jump in with?
The only time I'm okay with cross table conversations at my table, it annoys me, but I put up with it, is when you got younger players going back to kids or even adults where somebody's new to the system and another guy at the table is just trying to help him out, is just explaining certain mechanics of his character, of the type of class he's playing. I don't mind that because it actually has something to do with the game. It's when you're talking about anything else, it drives me up the bloody wall.
Yeah, once again, I think I'm in the middle of everybody. I agree. I always, if you've seen any of the role playing that I've done, I do my damnedest to stay in character as much as I can. But occasionally, a question needs to be asked for understanding, or occasionally, if I'm the game master, what I don't like is like, can my character? No. Don't ask if your character can do something. It's either on your character sheet or you have to attempt to do it. Sure, you can attempt to do anything, but sometimes there might be a clarification like, hey, does this count that I actually use this today since I made this roll? Just getting a grasp of the rules. I'm okay with that. Quick answer, move on. Usually my players handle that stuff.
Yeah, that's my preference. You just decide. If you made a mistake, we'll talk about it afterwards. It's in the game. We're just going to play in the game, and then afterwards, if I shouldn't have done that. Okay, well now we know for next time. It's not a big deal. We'll just move on. Like I don't like to derail anything, mechanics or otherwise. Just do your best and don't be a cheating loser. But at the same time, if you make an honest mistake, you make an honest mistake. But I'm not worried about it. Oh, I messed up on my hit points. Oh, I shouldn't have had that particular ability. Oh, I cast that spell one too many times. Oh, you know what? We'll talk about it afterwards. And if you want to fess up to the fact you made a mistake, fine. And if not, you'll figure it out, and we'll keep going.
My favorite one, and Dumb did this a couple of times to me too in a different respect, but my favorite one was when I was in the Pathfinder 2 game that Fritz was running. What's his channel called for? Forge and Brush, is what it's called now. And I kept putting away my sword to grab my sap because I didn't want to be a killer. I was like, so I just grabbed my sword. And every time it's like, okay, use your sword to do this. And I never corrected him. I never like, dude, I keep telling you I'm putting the sword away. Oh. But I did tell him after the session, it's like, I was starting to think that damn thing was cursed because every time I told you I put it away. And he said he went back and watched his video. He's like, yeah, you told me like 4 times you put that thing away. And I kept putting it in your hand. I just rolled with the punches on that. Like, I wasn't going to argue. There was no point in me arguing at that,
Well, actually, Max, no.
Yeah, right.
I hate that. Just
assume you were using pommel strikes, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever. Yeah.
All right, let's I can start that. Then I forget what this is about already, but you had another good idea, Crispy. Just you know what?
My second
right.
one.
You're right today. We're just going to say this is the Crispy stream. He's just right.
I've had 2 good ideas. Folks.
I don't know if I've ever seen a bromance kick off this damn fast.
Well, thanks, Connell. I like you too.
Oh,
Connell and Crispy sitting in a tree. Okay,
yeah, there we go.
Law Dog been a member for 13 months. Ryan, not for Crispy anymore. Now it's for Ryan. Ryan is spot on here. Too. We all have had to work with people we dislike, and we kept it professional to accomplish the mission. Yep. I have a hot take on this though, and then I'll let Ryan to pop in since it was towards him. I don't like characters coming in and out. I'm a Dragonlance guy. I'm a Lord of the Rings guy in terms of like, I want the party built. You're going to be rescuing kittens from trees. You're not going to be saving the freaking world at low level. But I want to know who that group is and not have this in-party fighting. I dealt with that for a couple of decades. It's just not, I just don't like dealing with it anymore. So yeah, while I do have to work with somebody that I might dislike, that's because I'm getting paid. And if I don't ever want to see the person again, I can. As a game master for a game, I kind of make it incumbent upon the players. You have to find a reason to get along, or you have to create a character that even if you dislike something, the barbarian and the wizard, you're going to learn to grow. Somebody else said that in chat. You're going to learn to grow and grudgingly respect, even if you don't like. I just don't deal, like, I don't allow PvP. I shouldn't say I don't allow. If you cause PvP in the game, when the character dies, that character's out, bring in a new one. Don't do that again. You know, I don't like that stuff in my games anymore. But Ryan, that comment was actually for you, so I'll put it back up again. Since you're spawned, I all had to work with people you dislike, and you kept it professional to accomplish the mission.
And this kind of gets into the difference between how I run my games and how you run your games, Max, because I treat every player character as if they're essentially a faction of one. Because in the systems that I run, when you look at the progression of each class, at some point, they're running something. The thief has, a thieves guild. The cleric has his church. The fighter becomes a lord. So there is this kind of built-in expectation that eventually you are going to have people under your command and be kind of running some kind of larger faction.
So where's that expectation coming from?
Well,
because even like using Rule Cyclopedia right now, that's an option. You can be a traveling fighter, a traveling cleric, a traveling mage. You don't have to go the domain, but you could also be a landowning fighter, landowning mage. So you can go that route.
That's something that Rule Cyclopedia adds, but if you look at like AD&D First Edition is the one that I go back to, and again, this depends on the game that you're running and the style that you're running. In AD&D First Edition, at I think it's 7th level as a fighter, you now have a domain and you're a lord, which implies that you have retainers and soldiers.
So is that built in as part of it? Because 2nd edition makes it an option.
Yes, it's in AD&D First Edition. It is very much built in.
Okay,
it's like that's the expectation. It was made optional because I think a lot of people just ignored it, but.
Well, the Hickman Manifesto, which I'm a complete proponent of, doesn't go against it, but it lends to a more Lord of the Rings or Dragonlance style of play, which, you could argue that Aragorn, had a domain, but most of the main characters were just still continuing on the adventures.
Right. And I like that style of game where everyone kind of goes off and does their own and the game expands and you get to domain management and stuff like that. And so as early as 1st level, and there's a great video out there by Mr. Wargaming, John Mollison, who explains that if you spend your money right as a 1st level fighter, if you buy, just like leather armor, a sword, and a shield instead of, really balling out in your gear, you can afford to hire 5-minute arms, and you start out as a 1st level fighter because the way that AD&D First Edition works, you're technically a sergeant in terms of mass combat. So you can command 5 people. So you start out with 5 guys, and you go from I can make 1 attack per turn to I can make 5 attacks per turn. So I like the idea that early on you're setting your players up to you're all working together right now, but you don't have to, and that's how I run things.
It's just a different style of play. I get it. It's just so people are clear out there, because I know I'll get comments on it. I don't hate his style of play. It's just not for me. It's wrong. No, it's just like, got to do this channel. But no, it's like, but that shows that there's different styles of play for different strokes for different folks. I would not be fully interested in that type of game, personally. And most of the people I know, which is, when you consider the gaming hobby as a whole, it's a small circle, wouldn't really be interested in that necessarily either. If we wanted to play Risk or Birthright, we'd play Risk or Birthright. That's how we look at it. It's not meant to be an insult, but I'm saying that's how we look at it. Other folks demand it. I get ripped on that domain play stuff constantly because we don't do it. Oh, you don't like domain. Oh, you don't actually play Dungeons and Dragons. Fine. That's fine. If I'm still playing the game, I want to continue leveling. I don't want to deal with where my tax revenue is coming from. Sorry, not interested.
The way Ryan described it, I can envision myself role playing that. Like, I think I could role play that.
Oh yeah,
pretty good.
I think you can do that 4D.
That's what that's all I care about is, can I stay in character for it? So, and I think I could. I think that there's some interesting options. I haven't done what you've described, but I'm interested in it. I think it would be worth.
And I highly suggest when it comes out, if you haven't backed it, Adventure Conquer King 2.
I was going to ask if that's what you're
yeah.
using, Ryan.
I have. Yeah, I love Axe.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to be on Macreese's stream in 3 weeks.
Nice. That's awesome. Love to have him. I'm not really doing interviews and so forth anymore. Like, it's just not my thing. He's one of the people I will make an exception for. And, oh, by the way, for the folks, and I'm off topic here and I really got to get back on topic. But for the folks who are sending me emails, DMs, and Instagram, I don't even check. I randomly checked Instagram for some reason. This message came in like 2 months ago. The only way to sign up for one of these panels is to join the Discord. I am not accepting it through any other means. So if you're telling me you like the show, or you're telling me that you heard about me from somebody else and so forth, I probably sent you the link to the Discord. I will do it again, but that is the way to sign up. I'm not penciling you in. Sign up on the Discord, okay? Otherwise, it becomes herding cats. No, I appreciate it.
Can I just weigh in on this player versus player?
Yes, please, go ahead.
So I also, like Max said, I don't allow PvP, but I absolutely allow character versus character. So I carry, and I don't think I'm not arguing semantics here. If you're in character and you're suddenly find yourself in complete opposition with another character who's being embodied by a player who's in character, then that can happen. You can have character versus character in our games. It has happened. We have had some instances where, I think I killed Phil's character in Max's game, or at least I tried my best to kill him. But it wasn't me. It wasn't from that kind of juvenile 13-year-old. Hey, I'm just gonna try to beat you as if this is suddenly a I don't know, like a Super Smash Brothers type. Like I'm just gonna, like, this is suddenly a fighting game between the two of us. I don't go for that at all. In fact, I don't allow that. But if you're in character and the character is now in opposition to another character, then yeah, that can happen. And as long as it stays in character, again, I only game with adults that can handle this. If there was someone that can't handle that, then
no, that's a really good point right there, because some groups that I've seen, especially when I used to sit with War Games West in Albuquerque, and I'd see the tables around us, you would have one character that always had to be the little jokester. Well, I'm going to steal something from the paladin and give it to the wizard. That's the type of crap that I'm like, okay, I'm so over that now. And then of course the paladin, instead of saying, hey, what happened to my holy symbol or whatever, the wizard's like, I don't know how it got on me. Wow, wizard, you took it, some crap like that. I'm going to chop off his hand. Oh, Jesus Lord. Do you guys even know how to play characters?
No, I like serious. I like people that are serious about the game, and I don't like clown shoes games. So
yes, clown shoes.
Just not interested.
Now, with that said, I just want, and this is again for everybody watching right now, some of the things I bring up are for the purposes of people who have never played, or who very rarely played, never played, want to know what they're getting into, and for people who've been playing for 40 years. So yeah, I kind of know that Crispy with his vetted groups, and probably Ryan over here with his vetted groups, but I bet you Connell has seen some of this nonsense.
Yeah, with adults.
And I bet you it's more from the adults than the kids.
Now, yeah. I God, the adults. Whenever I don't allow players trying to kill other players, I just will not have it. The consequence of that is take it to another freaking room if you guys are really going to freaking have it out. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. But at the same time, if you have two spell users just going at it, and we'll have a spell off, or two archers, being a ranger or a fighter, we'll have an archery tournament or something, just to, the one-upness to a certain degree, but keep it still in game. I will allow that as long as it stays in the realm of the game. Well, I think I'm a better shot than you. Will prove it, or I think my spells are stronger. I know other spells that you don't. Prove it. I am perfectly fine with that, because sometimes the wizard and Sorix can learn.
Yeah, but that's competition. I don't consider that PvP or even CVC. I just think that's just friendly competition. I'm talking the stuff that's detrimental.
Now, I've told you, Max, about the gentleman I had to physically remove from my game.
I thought that was for personal issues. Thought he was personally doing something to somebody.
Yeah. So there's consequences. If you're an ass to another player, sometimes the DM will just.
Well, to be fair, this is about character consequences. Yeah, but
well,
yeah,
the
okay.
Well, his character just disappeared. There was a consequence for the character.
Fair. All right, I've been bloviating too much here, and I'm supposed to be the host and not bloviating all the time. So we got to move into the next segment. But any final wrap up that you guys have?
Nope.
Okay. I'm going to get this under control one day. I tell myself after every episode, I got to stop just yapping, and here I am just yapping. So one day I'll figure it out. Crafting Gamer says, and this is the last comment I'm putting up for this segment, is I like the idea of classes not being able to get along, but allowed to grow and trust. Exactly like Gimli and Legolas. 100% agree. I hate myself for making that reference, but no, it's an easy one to make, and I think it's a good one to make. I was going to ask before, because the Dragonlance reference came up with Raceland, right? Do you think Raceland would have made it if it wasn't for his brother interceding all the time?
No, obviously not.
No.
So yeah, I mean, I do think that if you have something like if you three, let's just say that Ryan and Crispy are going to be the brother combination. One's an evil jackass, and the other one's the good-hearted guy that's always just let's just all just get along. And Connell's one that's just really sick of this crap, right? Like, oh my god, he needs his ass beat because of. I don't mind that kind of dynamic in the game. One, as long as the players are okay with it, I don't mind that. What I'm talking about when I say PvP, I'm talking about Crispy took the gem that I wanted. I'm gonna kill him. Wait, what? Or I'm gonna, and this is something that I saw actually happen, and all the players got up from the table, ended up leaving, not from this one thing, but this is what started it. I'm gonna steal the mage's spell book and throw it in the lake. And we were sitting at our table and we stopped and we're like, what? What are you guys doing over there? And of course the player's like, oh, this is because, the player heard it. So now he's metagaming and, whatever. It's like, this bullshit, blah, 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 and the game master's just like, and eventually the argument spilled up to a point where they're just like, screw it, we're out. And while I still kind of allowed that stuff at my tables at that time, that is one of the things that I remember that I'm like, I just don't think this is good for the table. I know it's fun to say, not disagreeing necessarily with these guys, but it's fun to say, hey, I allow it. But to me, and the way the groups that I like to run, the campaign style I like to run, that's just detrimental to it. And I don't want to, I don't want to see that. So, all right. Where's my thingy here?
We had a couple rogues that were just constantly trying to steal from each other, but they were having fun at it. They weren't, how dare.
If it isn't detrimental to the party, I see no reason to stop it.
Yeah.
All right, let's okay, the charity we support is the Wounded Warrior Project, a national nonpartisan organization whose mission is to honor and empower wounded warriors. Please refer to the video's description for the link to where you can make your hopefully tax-deductible donation. Also, for folks out there who want to be part of a team, like, you know what, I want to support a charity, but I'd like to do it on my own terms, you can join the Nerds and Warriors team. I think that link goes directly to the Nerds and Warriors team, and you can just sign up for it and get your own donations. It won't come to us. You'll get credit for it, but you'll still be part of the team, and we can together pool our money and say, you raised more. I guess that's how that works. But it's just fun that the team can get the word out a little bit better. So anyway, if you enjoy this discussion, please like this video, subscribe to all of the panelists' channel, which you can find in the description, plus the extra link that Ryan gave us during that segment. All right. I would promise to speed this up, but I would just probably be a liar, but I'm going to try to speed this up to the best I can. All right, now we're going to talk into segment 3. I don't even know if I mentioned what segment 3 is going to be earlier like I should have, but it's going to be political and environmental consequences. Once again, some of this may have already come up, but we'll try to dive into it a little bit more. I'll just say refer to what I said earlier. I don't know. And we're going to start with Connell on this one. Connell, how do you handle in-game political and environmental consequences for character actions? Environmental are things like we talked earlier with the superhero thing, throwing a train in the road, or a mudslide, or causing a forest fire in LA, or whatever. But the reason why I mentioned is not to be frivolous, but look what happens when things, this is why, like I said, I don't think wizards should be in the middle of cities. So that's what we mean by environmental consequences for character actions. And what techniques do you use to integrate these elements meaningfully into your campaign?
If you have this really goes with the adults more so with the kids. If I have a group of players that want to, let's say they're in town and they want to go drinking or whatever, just doing what players can do. And one of them does something like hits on the wrong girl, the one it's the governor's or the who's ever wife. They'll get there will be consequences of the state that sometimes the merchants in that town will not give them the price that they're looking for, or depends on the situations. They can't get the cleric, the church, the temples in the town will not heal them, will not give them healing potions. Sorry, man, we've heard about you and your party. We just don't want it. It's not worth dealing with you guys. Best of luck. The wizard in a wizard tower in the middle of the city scenario. You set off a fireball in city and you catch a couple houses are on fire, then you're going to get fined, or there's something. The city itself is going to come after you for dues.
You know, a lot of middle-aged style cities used to actually have death penalties for things that could cause fires.
Right. I mean, if I'm playing, I ran a campaign once where one of the towns they came across, it was just like an old Western town, no guns in town. I mean, what breaks down is no swords, no bows, nothing, no weapons. If you're a spellcaster, please keep your spells to non combustible. I should say is the best. And there are fines, or they get arrested and stuff like that. I try to keep it somewhat mild because I don't want a party that says, screw it, we're just going to murder the entire town. Because I've seen that happen. I haven't been in a campaign per se, but I've seen where that crap just goes way overboard.
So how do you track and manage, say, ripple effects of environmental destruction or political unrest that the characters cause?
Let's say you're fighting a bunch of hobgobs out in the forest or whatever, and you cast a fireball that goes off. You rolled a nat 1. Well, now the fireball could end up in a field of wheat or whatever, and now that town, village, thorpe, whatever, does not have enough food for that winter. And no matter what good you do in the rest of the campaign, you have that stigma of you're responsible for a town or whatever starving that following winter.
Okay, so what? Sure, you told me I'm responsible. What do I care?
You can get banned from towns. It could follow you from town.
Okay, this is a pissant little town. I'll go to the next one.
It follows. The reputation, it ruins reputation across the board. And like I said, it can hurt you financially, health potions, or whatever down the road.
All right. I can move on to Ryan unless anybody has any follow-ups with Connell there.
I have one follow-up question.
Please.
You mentioned reputation.
Yeah.
Is this something that you actively track? Do the players track that? Can you talk a little bit more about that? You track it? How do you just kind of make a note?
How they treat themselves, how they act in the towns and small towns will follow them. If they are the heroes because they saved a the town mayor, then their bards will start singing about their actions. If they screw the pooch per se, bards are the best way to get the message of the reputation of your group from town to town to town, because bards travel.
So that's communicated via in-world, the bards in-world. It's not you're just telling your reputation rank is now.
No. But the more good you do, the more welcome you're going to be. The worse that you do, the more unwelcome.
I mean, I think you could have a mechanic that represents that still, but yeah, I do agree that should be in-game. What about this scenario? This is still for Connell because I think he's the one that's most high fantasy-ish here.
Most likely
is okay. Wizard was doing who cares, fighting orcs, having a duel, just messing around one day with fireball because we all love fireball, right? Sets a forest fire. The forest fire happened to be where a whole city or country, whatever size you want to think that's big, of elves. The humans may never have even really known it because the elves decided to keep to themselves, and since they're part of nature, they're hidden away. It could be far enough outside the nearest city or town where humans just don't venture, whatever. But these elves are now witness to the fact that this dude, for whatever reason, happened to be whipped out a fireball, and it burned down their entire home, which could be the size of a county. How would you handle something like that?
Same way. Reputation. I mean, creatures talk. People talk, and I go with the bard because even elves get bards for one reason or the other. Just it follows you.
Okay, now I'm going to run this scenario. You're going to be the player for a second. The elves have decided to declare war against the humans, or at least the humans in that area. Obviously, you're too much of a danger. At least orcs can be understood. We know they're going to be chaotic, ruthless jackasses. You guys are so chaotic and nutty. We can't tell which one of you is good, evil, otherwise. So at least within, we'll say, 50 miles, there isn't going to be a human that remains. Or we'll say 1 day travel. Who cares? 20 some miles. There isn't going to be a human that remains, and they go to war, what's remaining of them, against humans. You're thinking elves are good guys. Elves should help us. And now they have just declared some sort of war. Now they're not going to do it through a petition or a casus belli, but any human that comes there, it's like, what's that island outside of India? Anybody that goes there just gets killed, those cannibals or whatever they are. So it just turns into something like that. How do you, as a player, deal with that? Or how to use a game master? You implemented that. How to use a game master, express that to your players?
Because there's a DM. Now that you've caused this incident, you are going to be shunned, outrightly just shunned and hold responsible. The players could end up in a dungeon prison of some sort. The campaign is basically done unless the players can figure out a way around the situation or fix the problem. But the campaign as a whole has a huge pin stuck in it until this situation is solved.
Okay. Humans are going to be looking for you, possibly. Mercenaries are going to be coming after you. Oh, I forgot to put my little glowy banner up. Hold on. There we go. Now I can talk. No, but I mean, there are a lot of different consequences that can be implemented here. There are pariahs everywhere. Like, what are you talking about? Why is your human, we'll call it, human village coming after me? Why is a major city that might have some elves and dwarves and gnomes and halflings, oh my, in there? Why am I ostracized from everywhere I'm going? Because you started a war. Lords are raising armies right now to determine what to do with this, because we generally consider elves good, but they're murdering all of us, and we're humans, and we don't like things that try to murder us, yada, yada. You've just changed the global landscape.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
The players will pay for it one way or the other. Trust me, I will figure it out, and no one's going to be having a good freaking day for several campaign runs, game sessions.
Okay, let's move this over to Ryan. I know you're going to have some things to say about this one because all your factions, and I've got a bunch of faction questions. We'll see how many you answer without me even asking them. How do you handle in-game political and environmental consequences for character actions, and what techniques do you use to integrate these elements meaningfully into your campaign?
So I'm going to start, and this is going to be a little unusual, so just bear with me here. I'm going to start by reading a quote from Batman Begins. This is said at the very end of the movie when Batman and Jim Gordon are having a conversation on a rooftop. So Jim Gordon says, "What about escalation?" Batman, "Escalation?" And then Jim Gordon, "We start carrying semi-automatics, they buy automatics. We start wearing Kevlar, they buy armor-piercing rounds." This philosophy, I actually pilfered shamelessly this quote and changed a couple of the details and put it in my book. This drives my philosophy around like political consequences in Nighthaven. The more you do, the more trouble you're going to get into, and the more that has been like set up to prevent trouble, the more people are going to try to circumvent these safeguards. So I mentioned earlier, armor is prohibited to be worn openly in Nighthaven, except for during like a time of war. Some enterprising individual found a light enough alloy that they made an armor that can be weaved into the fabric of a suit. and this is like a highly coveted magic item in Nighthaven. These are some of the examples of escalation. You can't carry like heavy weapons, so they have pole arms that collapse to the size of a short sword. All to get around the restrictions put on weaponry that would be like realistic for a city. As a consequence, though, if you are caught using these things by the guard, you're going to be in serious trouble. You're talking about like multipliers out the butt for the crimes that you commit. You know, you committed a crime and you're not supposed to have that weapon, so we can throw smuggling charges on top of that and all that. And then environmentally, you know, you're role playing within a city, so a lot of people don't think about this when they play D&D. I've noticed this, but you throw a fireball in a city and you miss, or even if you hit, you still have the splash damage, and your proximity to like things other than your target is, you know, really close. You're going to catch a building on fire if you throw a fireball. And part of this with my factions, I have a very detailed system of how and when the guards respond, when they get reinforcements, how quickly it takes them to get involved. All that stuff has been kind of factored into Nighthaven. So if you cause trouble in a crowded street in the middle of the day, the guards will be there in at most 4 rounds, and they're going to bring in backup pretty quickly. They're going to have musketeers with them. Eventually,
they're better than real world police.
Yeah, yeah. It's like if you cause trouble in certain parts of the city and during certain times of day, your life is going to be miserable. And that's like the way that I view how consequences should be, you know, environmentally in a city is you have restrictions placed on how you can equip yourself, and at the same time, like your actions are going to have very different consequences than when you're out in a dungeon environment or a wilderness environment. Now, politically, again, you're interacting a lot with these different factions. And so you've got gangs that have various different territories. A lot of them don't get along. You know, you've got a gang that handles gambling. You've got gangs that fight with each other over protection rackets, narcotics trades, all that kind of stuff. You have the Sisterhood of Scarlet Madams, who are the prostitutes that I've mentioned a couple times. I mentioned them because they play heavily into Volume 1 that's coming out in February. If you try to run like counter prostitution operations to them, your girls' heads are going to be returned to you in a basket. That's kind of the way that things work in Nighthaven. Is retribution will be swift and severe, and it's on the players, knowing full well what the consequences may be, to find ways to break these rules without getting caught.
Okay. Let me read super chat here real quickly and then follow up with that a little bit. Raven, thank you very much for the $20. Appreciate that. Even if you do think I'm Capellan scum. A consequence my PC suffered when I ran the horror on the hill in Mystara was banishment by a local noble when they raised a small army of his peasants to attack the Hobgoblin King and his warband occupying the dungeon. Wow. Yeah, maybe if you're going to like raise a warband of the kings, because remember, kings own everything.
Yep.
You might want to get his permission first before you do it. Just saying. But that was a good one. I like that, Raven. I want to ask you a really good one here. Let's see if I can find. I have a whole ton of political follow-up questions here.
Can I ask a question before?
Oh, absolutely. You got priority. Go ahead.
You mentioned that there was a prohibition on armor. What other prohibitions do you have? Like, I'm just curious. Is this because it informs a lot of the response of the various, like you mentioned, it makes certain disguised protection much more valuable. What other things have you have you played around with this kind of political prohibition against whatever?
So I tried my best to copy the kind of late medieval, early Renaissance martial ethic that you would find in. It's mostly Germany. They've got the most extensive records of their kind of martial ethic. Basically, you are required for your own protection to carry a sword, a dagger, and then I've added pistols because it's a black powder fantasy world. You can carry those, and in fact, you are encouraged and in some cases required to carry them. If you are a male of fighting age, you have to be able to, present weapons, because the Baron of the city is at some point going to have to raise you as an army. But when it comes to armor that is like worn visibly, that can be seen, that's illegal. It's also illegal if it's invisible, but they'd have to find it on you. Long arms, so muskets, unless you're going out of the city to go hunting, you can't be carrying them within the city. Heavy weapons of war, so like, pole arms, spears, great swords, things like that. Those are prohibited. So basically, if it's for personal defense, you can carry it. No armor at all. And then anything that's above personal defense, anything that would be considered a weapon for battlefield, that is, you're not allowed to carry that. And so that's where, you can't openly carry muskets, but it's a lot easier to conceal a musketoon in your coat, almost like a sawed-off shotgun, than it is a musket. And so, you'll see cut down muskets, you'll see collapsible pole arms, armor that can be worn under regular clothing, or that's sewn into the fabric of clothing. That's a lot of what you see within Nighthaven to get around those restrictions.
How because you've talked a lot about the factions, you've talked quite a bit about the consequences of messing with them, but how do those political consequences shape the players' interactions with the various factions, especially knowing that by helping one, they're going to piss off one or two others, or we'll even call the protection racket. Mysteriously, you got in trouble, and instead of getting fined, these three random people you don't even know came out of the woodwork and said, no, that guy over there started it. We saw the whole thing. That guy started it. He didn't do anything wrong here, blah, blah. How does that shape their interactions with the society?
So there is going to be a degree of walking on eggshells early on, because you don't know who you're in with, or who's going to have it out for you. But once you actually start to work with specific factions, there is a process of basically becoming a made man. So the incentive is you have to click up with somebody, whether it's the church.
So prison rules.
Yeah. Whether it's the church, the guard, one of the gangs, you basically have to have a sponsor, someone who's going to be watching out for you, and you have to then interact with maybe multiple of these factions to find out who's gonna work best for me. And then if you don't find or if eventually you find that the people you thought were watching your back are actually turning on you, you're gonna have to start building your own. And again, like, I see that as a goal of all players. You want to be the one who people are coming to for protection and for power. You want to be the power broker eventually. Mm-hmm. But starting off early on, you've got to go find somebody to help you out.
Okay. Actually, you answered my other faction questions. I was reading through them like, yep, he hit that. Yep, he hit that. Yeah. So I think we're good there. Unless you guys have anything you want to follow up with him, I'll move over to Crispy.
Oh, all okay. Right. I really like this question.
Let me read it again. My purpose for reading it is please. For people who forgot what it was and so forth. Sure. So how do you handle in-game political and environmental consequences for character actions? And what techniques do you use to integrate these elements meaningfully into your campaign?
I really like this. I've got a whole page of notes on this
Nice.
particular one. I always begin with the assumption that all structures have some, like all groups have some kind of political hierarchy, and so wherever, like even if it's just the goblins have been mentioned a few times here. There's still a political hierarchy there too. So
There's still a
regardless,
hobgoblin beating him up, right?
exactly. There's always going to be someone up, and nature abhors a vacuum. So whenever there's the way this seems to come up a lot in my games, and I'm really glad that it does. I enjoy the political intrigue style of conflicts because to me it feels real. The other reason why politics comes in a lot in my games is because it's such an attractive vehicle to obtain power and influence. And so like this is a quick way to get more of what you want. I think political figures make for great patrons. They also make for fantastic villains because they have all sorts of resources. And I also like the idea of communicating the competing ideas in the world through these political structures. So it's not uncommon in games, like for example, in our Horizon game, which is a weekly game that we do online. We had a situation where I introduced one group that is obviously political in their ambitions, and then another group, and then there's some terrorism that happens, and who's behind it. Well, it seems to be these ones, and it never actually went anywhere because of my players decided, you know what, this place is just a little too crazy. We're out of here. And that's fine. I'm not upset that they jumped planet to somewhere else. But I really do feel like politics should be ingrained in the background, at least. Like it should just be there under the surface. It's so omnipresent. And the same reason why I like environmental consequences is because it brings this element of tangibility to the world. I keep mentioning this, but I'm looking for a world simulation. So as Ryan said, this is something that we harp on a lot. I certainly harp on this. You fire your musket and you miss. That musket ball went somewhere. Now, yeah, maybe it just ricocheted off the building behind, but maybe it did more than that. And if it did more than that, then that's an environmental consequence that should have some ramifications. That tangibility, it lends credibility to this is an actual, we're pretending that this world actually exists. So forest fires are a thing, or droughts are a thing, or whatever. Like if you poison the well, there's an environmental consequence to that. I mentioned already that I liked the superhero game because of the environmental consequences for superpowered heroes wrecking a city. We had a situation where the game was being run in a fictional version of Denver. The Denver International Airport gets a huge amount of damage, like planes damaged, terminals damaged. What is the environmental consequence of that? Well, it's huge. There's even political consequences that now you don't have an airport. How is that going to impact the people that are traveling to or from Denver? What time of year is it? Is this in the middle of ski season? What is going on? What is the local politician going to do with it? What is the federal politician going to, the state? How are they going to get involved? Is the governor now involved? Do we have some 3-letter agency that's now coming in?
Is the Illuminati upset that you uncovered their tunnels?
Well, that's right. The Greek Orthodox Archbishop, who just happens to be visiting, just when that happened, and he has there's some shadowy things happening there. So I love the political intrigue. What have I done in my games? So I've given you that example of the superhero game and the environmental impact and the damage to infrastructure, and even in a modern game where you think, well, maybe this isn't a runaway forest fire because of an errant fireball. It could also be something major, like you've disrupted port facilities in the port of New York. Like, what is that going to mean? That could be a huge issue. Most modern cities do not carry enough food for more than 24 hours. You've disrupted a logistics chain that may cause significant hardship, and public opinion is going to shift. So there's a political implication to that. I did try something for a while. I ran a several-month campaign where we thought it would be interesting for the party to start their own kingdom, like start their own on the frontier. It starts as nothing. It's just a few cleared trees, a little like. Then it's the game is as it went and it progressed for quite a while. So it's a negotiation, it's trade agreements, it's how do we get along with our neighbors? How do we entice settlers to come here? What is the economic underpinning of this settlement? How are we going to do that? And at the same time, how do we keep these settlers from just getting killed all the time? Because that's going to impact how many more want to come here. And the goal, the long-term goal of that particular campaign was we want to get to the point of where we're a powerful city state. Like that's eventually what we want to get to. It was very interesting because it came up pretty quick. Oh, what is the government going to look like? What are we going to do with this? It was an interesting experiment. It's not something I do in every game, but I do recommend it if you haven't tried something like that. Ryan's mentioned domain play and how that's Acts 2. It kind of leans into that. I think it's worth trying. You may find something there that you really enjoy role playing, because we've also run.
Let me interject since we're on that point.
Sure.
For two things. One, I got the super chat, but a great game to start because the rules they're not Adventure Conquer King style rules. Much simpler than that. But that actually does what he's talking about is Forbidden Lands with the Stronghold.
Mm-hmm.
It does a really good job on a rules light kind of methodology, a more of a implicit than explicit, because you are supposed to build your stronghold, but you got to buy the people, you've got to build the rooms, you've got to get the gold. It takes time to do it. You've got to convince people that you're actually going to be a protector. Otherwise, when you're out adventuring, the keep gets ransacked and you lose all your employees. Yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
Does a very good job in a more compact form to do that. No knock on Ryan or Adventure Conquer King; those are great. I'm just talking for people who want something a little more introductory, a little less deep. I think. The Forbidden Lands does that perfect. Whoops, there we go. And also got the super chat here. Agile Monk, by the way, for whatever reason, in segment 1, Crispy was getting all the love. Now in segment 3, Ryan's getting all the love. So share the love with everybody, folks.
No, it's good. He deserves it.
So Agile Monk says, Max, truly great group of guests tonight and fantastic discussion points. Kudos to you all for the show. Yes. No, it is. It's one of the reasons why I'm not angry. I normally get a little angry when we go too long. As long as they're okay hanging out, I'm okay doing this because it absolutely is an amazing discussion. Last week was awesome. This week is even better, I think. That just bodes great things for the future. Love the panel tonight. Thank the guys for being on. Everybody in chat should thank the guys for being on as well by following their channels and going to their Substacks.
Thank you.
We're saying thank you here, but appreciate the 1999 Agile Monk. Go ahead, Crispy, finish up your thought there.
Well,
Sorry,
finishing up thoughts here. I think it's useful, or I find it useful, to ask myself questions when it comes to the political or environmental impact of what the characters have done. I ask things like, which group stands to benefit or is most affected by this? Like, so what are they going to be thinking about this? And how will the new political structure respond to these characters? Is this something that they're going to be, is there going to be a reach out to, hey, we want to bring you on our team? This is something, whereas maybe there's a competing group that, because typically that's what you're going to find. You're going to find in most political structures, there's a tension between various groups and I love that tension. Mm-hmm. Again, coming back to this idea that consequences are the adventure, and political consequences shouldn't be ignored. I wouldn't shy away from it. Again, I do like to run different settings, such as modern settings. We had a 1970s gangster game. The political ramifications of that they were always there. They're always kind of simmering under. What does the family want? What are they? How are they reacting to the political influence of the police versus what is City Hall doing? What are the other competing criminal organizations doing? So asking yourself those questions. So what group is going to benefit from this? Or in other words, they're going to be behind the party. They're going to be excited about what the party has done. What group is going to be impacted in a negative way? And what is their response going to be? And I like asking those questions. It's again, a lot of the game is acquiring more influence, power, and politics, for better or worse. They're part of that. and I
So
think
let
that
me
it
let
should
me
be.
flip the script, or it's not really flipping the script, but on the politics side of it, one of the things, especially, so I'm a conservative, right? In the conservative circles, we like to say, facts don't care about your feelings. But let's be honest, people vote based on their feelings. Doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter how small or how big. One of those. So why do I say this? It's not to get political, but when you're talking political implications, you could be the most rational person out there. Heathen Dog's a perfect example of this. He tries to look at everything through a rational lens, and when you explain to him that people aren't rational, he just they're just stupid. Well, right, but stupid people get to vote if that's the way you want to look at it, and they tend to vote differently than you do because they're both voting on their feelings. Now let's take this into a game concept. You think you've got the most perfect argument, or you think that what you did was justified. Let's go back to killing the goblin babies. But what was somebody put in the chat? What did you put? Somebody say goblins men's rights or something in the chat here? Thought that was hilarious. But you now have the elf movement. And I don't mean the race. I mean Eco Liberation Front, whatever the hell they're called, the terrorist group. And they found out that you killed goblins, and now your name is besmirched. Well, they've got money in. They're the Greenpeace, right? They're shilling out money to that baron that you're talking about, while you think you did everything perfect and you have all the rational right and responsibility and etc. You're still the pariah.
Yes.
What the hell?
No, that's good. That's good. That's a dynamic adventure. That's the world responding in believable ways, whether or not we agree.
Gamers don't like that, though.
Well, the ones I game with do. So
again, fair,
it's not,
you very much vet your group, but again, for the folks out there who are running maybe a 5e game or running at conventions and so forth, they run across a lot. Well, conventions might not be such a good idea; it's a one shot. But I know the gamers, even that I've played with, would argue that crap tooth and nail. Like, this is BS. Why isn't he listening to me? Come on, I'm being rational here. He's just being an idiot. How does this guy lead anything? I'm like,
so the way I handle that, Max. So the way I handle that, Max, is that it's not a unilateral response.
Sure.
So let's say that the elf rights group is whatever, they're going to campaign against you. There'll be another group that campaigns for you. Like, it's not going to be it's more than there'll be a little. I like the idea that there's a multiplicity of responses out there, and then by pulling few of them, I mean, with the players feel pretty good, or their characters feel good, because now there's someone, building a statue of them, while a couple towns over they're burning them in effigy. So it's the two should coexist.
Sure.
So I
but
see.
But if you got,
let's
say you got a barony, the Lord, right on. The Lord, the guards, the sheriffs, the constables, whatever you want to call them in your land, they're all on the side because the Baron pays them and they owe fealty to him, and he's all listening to this. So he's like, you killed them, you're a bunch of murderers, and we're coming after you. Of course, I absolutely agree with you that there are going to be people on the other side, maybe even trying to protect them. But if they're not the authority, they're not the law. And I'm not asking you what the answer is, but what are the characters going to do?
That sounds like a good adventure.
Yeah. All right.
Let's see what happens. We'll role play it out.
Yeah.
All right, Connell, you look like you want to jump in and say something.
This is not my story. This is very much a Jade story, but it has to do with what you guys are talking about. In fantasy, I don't remember if he ran it or it was a campaign he was in, but more or less, a kingdom was plagued by a sickness. For whatever reason, they could not find a cure for it using magic, divinity, or whatever. They just could not find a cure for it. So the only way they could solve it is for the king's wizard to make them all undead. Now the whole kingdom is nothing but undead. I'm not saying putting alignment out of this, but whatever. Okay. And you're a group of adventurers and you come across a kingdom of undead. What is the player's natural response? Well, we need to kill all these undead. Well, now, because your consequence is you killed all these undead, the wizard, the king, the town, who were all innocent. But because you thought your thought processing was right and they were undead, you did evil. Now, how would a player, how as a DM, I don't even know what I would do with that. Do any of you guys?
I would insist that the players stay in character. So some characters are going to be devastated. Others will say, well, that's just the way it goes. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. I wouldn't impose anything.
And some characters would say something along the lines of they had been cursed. This was no blessing. They were
setting them free,
but,
whatever. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. It is always an interesting argument that he puts up to me every so often. It's like, that's, they're undead. So naturally you want to put them down, but they weren't evil. And you have to remove the alignment argument way out of this scenario for it to actually make sense.
Yeah, but players do like to rationalize things in their own mind and pretend that they're right. That's why, I love Palladium alignment system so much better, because it just says in there, we'll do this, we'll not do that, may do this, can do, it's like like those main concepts. And I love it.
That's what I started with, 1986. That's what it was. And so for me, that really does color a lot. That's why I do, like, even in systems where like DCC or Weird Frontiers, where the alignment is pretty loose, I still insist that players give some thought to what their character thinks is right and wrong. And it comes back to that, what Robotech RPG taught me, that you should have some things that you'll never do, some things you may do, some things you'll always avoid or may avoid. So yeah.
Real quickly, Agile Monk, thank you very much for the 5 gifted memberships. That's like $25. I can shout that out now. So I appreciate that. And I just want to remind folks, I'm going to run before I do the giveaway. This will be at the end of the stream. This won't be while the panel discussion is going on. When I do the giveaway, I will run the script again that will add everybody that it can. I don't think the gifted subs are added by YouTube until like the next day or something. I don't know how it works. It just seems that gifted subs don't get put in right away. People who manually, not subs, members, people who manually do the membership, they're in right away. So once I run it again, people who manually became a member or updated their membership today, that will get added. So remember, so sorry about that. I'm not going to fight that. I'm not going to manually jam everybody's name in there. It's not going to happen. But everybody who's a member and everybody who's super chatted will be added to the list, or Rumble ranted. So for the giveaway. But I thank you for the memberships. You guys have answered most of these, and while I came up with a question that I wanted to ask up until I said that, and I was hoping that I wrote it down, but apparently I didn't. I didn't write it down because I wanted to piggyback on what you were saying there, Crispy, one more time. But I'm not going to derail this or slow it down. So, do you guys have any follow-ups there before I hit some chat?
Nope.
Okay, this is still segment 3, folks. We're going kind of long today, but I appreciate these guys hanging out. I know, like, Ryan for sure has a kid, so he probably wants to get to bed at some point here. But we got one more segment to go, and the last one is going to actually be about player reactions to character consequences, because we all know some players love it, some players hate it, some players don't give a crap. It's just a dumb game. So we'll see about that in a moment. And let's check out some of this chat. I read all the $20 ones. So I actually only have 2 starred. Yep, because that was last segment. Okay. First of all, Chimerian says, I'm just happy to hear that I'm not the only one who thinks in these circles. Happy to be watching this week. Well, I'm happy you're here as well. I got to be honest. I don't think I'm as good at this as I think I am after hearing these guys talk. I mean, I like to think that I'm pretty good about the whole consequences side of thing, but overwhelmed is not the right word. Because of how I structure my world building and my adventures, so to speak, with the timelines, I know what's going on in a vast majority of things, but every little minuscule faction and everybody, I never envisioned them punching, we'll just say, a prostitute in the face. Who's going to be angry about that? And who's going to think that that was justified because they're evil horrors? I don't necessarily dive into that. And so I might not be as prepared for that as I thought I'd be, even though I think I generally handle consequences and factions pretty well. But it's a great panel tonight. It's a discussion I wasn't sure if I was going to like, but I'm totally enthralled by it. So awesome. And yeah, It's like I said, Kamari, it's a good panel. That's the main thing. And then Agile Monk gifted the 5 memberships. That's really all I started for that segment. I see the conversation you guys are having, a lot of good back and forth there. I see the wildfire discussion, the military discussion, so forth. I'm not going to bring those up, but thank you for keeping the commentary going in chat there. And yep, Ryan got a lot of love in segment 3. So there we go. Our panelists
Thanks,
are getting the
guys.
love they deserve.
You win that round, Ryan.
Well, and Connell was getting love for bringing the game to a new generation of players.
There you
so
go. And he
nobody
deserves
gets
it.
love but me. Let me put my sign up here. Boop. There we go. All right, just a reminder, Game Master Insight airs live on Fridays at 6 p.m. Central Time, except for the last Friday of the month, because that's our members-only live stream, which some of you now have access to. Yay! Once this live stream ends, the full live stream will remain available to YouTube members only, while these 4 panel discussion segments will post to the public a month later. Segment 5 just stays for members only. We just kind of hang out there and people come and go as they want. If you enjoy this discussion, please like this video, subscribe to all the panelist channels, which you can find in the description. Alrighty. Well, we started with Ryan. We're going to end with Ryan, at least in regard to the primary question. So again, this is going to be player reactions to character consequences. However, before we do that, before we go into the last segment, we will have our panel briefly remind us who they are, what content they create, and where you can find them on the internet. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, so you can find me over on Substack at rollandbones.substack.com. The name of my publication is Bonehead Ideas with Ryan Howard, and I'm really just posting a lot about gaming, and some other stuff comes in there, but it's mostly my thoughts on RPGs. That's also where you'll want to look for updates on specifically when you can purchase the Rake's Codex of Nighthaven Volume 1. That'll be sometime at the end of February. There is going to be some kind of special discount for anyone who joins as a paid subscriber on Substack. There will be more details about that forthcoming. I will announce more about that this Tuesday when I am on This is Dundermoose. But for right now, that's where you need to go to find all the information about what I'm working on.
Okay. And we'll move over to Crispy again. Just briefly remind us who you are, what content you create, and where they can find you on the internet.
Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is at Table Runner. I go by my nickname Crispy on YouTube, where I'm enthusiastically supportive of role play. Like I'm really passionate about in-character play. You'll find on my YouTube channel some shorter videos just talking about role play, as well as our live games. We post many live games there if you want to go and see actual games that we're running, both when I'm a player as well as the few times when I do run the game. That's what I'm doing, and I'm certainly enthusiastic about it. Been involved in the hobby for a long time, but for me, I'm having a bit of a renaissance as I've discovered. You can actually play in character for the whole game session. It's hard, a whole game session, maybe 90% of the time, but it's still a lot of fun. I really enjoy it, and we're always happy to have more conversations with people. So appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Max.
All right, Connell. Again, briefly remind us who you are, what content you create, and where people can find you on the internet.
I am Connell, the Cigar DM. I'm easy to find. Just put cigars and RPG together, and 10 to 1 you'll find me. My channel that will be rebooted here soon will be doing, like I said earlier, reviewing movies and seeing if we could plug in some kind of RPG aspect to it. I also about ready to get into within the next year broadcasting a game that I will be running with a group of friends I've had for the last couple of years. It will be Curse of Strahd, so I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, you're not allowed to run Curse of Strahd unless you run the first edition Ravenloft module first.
Fair enough. I might do that off screen, but it should be fun all the same. I just want to say this has been really fun. I've hanging out with Ryan before. Max, I'm always hanging out with you whenever I get a chance. Crispy, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's very nice to meet you, sir. Thank you.
All right, so our question, starting with Ryan. What approaches do you take to encourage players to consider the repercussions of their actions, and how do you ensure they feel engaged with the outcomes?
I mean, one of the biggest struggles I've actually had is not like, let me reframe this. The biggest struggle that I have with players is getting them to act knowing that there will be consequences. I have a lot of players where I'll say, look, here's what could happen if you do this, and then they just kind of freeze. And then their games become a lot of like, we're going to meander around the city and avoid having to actually deal with anything. And so there's this great phrase that people used to say a lot. You look the player directly in the eyes and say, "Hey, do you want to play D&D?" If the answer is yes, you have to actually go do something. You've got to go make something happen. I am not going to send things for you to do.
Wait. There's no exclamation points over their heads?
No. Damn it. You need to go out there and take chances, make mistakes, and get messy, as Miss Frizzle would say in the Magic School Bus. If you don't do that, I'm going to lose interest very quickly, because we're all just going to be sitting around a table and our characters are all just going to be sitting around a table. And that's not what we're here to do. So you have to actually go out there and do it. And if you don't, then we're just not going to play anymore. And I've had to end a group over that before.
Good on you.
You've answered all of these follow-up questions that I had, and I don't have anything from what you said there, because I can't disagree with that. It's just, you're either playing the game or you're not. I guess, how do you reinforce the idea that consequences are a natural part of, say, an adventure or campaigning, not a punishment?
I think some players need that gentle reminder of, this isn't actually going to happen to you. I'm not going to stab you in the chest. I'm not going to shoot you. I'm not going to set you on fire. At the end of the day, like, this is just this is just a player character. If they die, we'll roll up a new one. Just like, get out there and go do stuff. And I think there's this mentality that's been drilled into players through, and this is not a slant. This is not an attack on 5e, Connell. This is an attack on the culture around 5e. There's this, I got my anime character art commissioned. I got my dice in the color scheme of the outfit that my my character wears. I have my custom miniature. And so if you kill my sweet precious baby here, I'm going to be real upset, because I dropped hundreds of dollars on all of this miscellaneous
but I have
garbage.
The skins. I bought the skins.
And so set all of that aside. Don't do that. If anyone shows up to my table with that stuff, I'm just like, hey, look, you're going to be in for a rude awakening here. I advise you not do this ever again.
So just to dive into that just a touch more, how do you handle situation? I'm sorry, what steps do you take to encourage? This is the one I wanted to ask, because it's related to what you're saying. What steps do you take to ensure consequences don't discourage players from taking bold actions?
You have good and bad consequences. And so it's just, it's being fair with doling them out when they're appropriate. So if a player, you have to present a good risk reward ratio there. So, players that succeed in doing these long shot crazy things, they're going to get some, great rewards out of it. Like Connell mentioned earlier on in the show, the kid that wants to, swing on the chandelier and do stuff. Like, if you succeed in that, you're Captain Jack Sparrow, as he said. You have this like grand story of something cool that you did. If you fail, you fall on your butt and then someone caves your head in. But that, again, that's the game. You have to realize that if you do pull off this crazy long shot thing, people are going to be talking about you in taverns. You're going to get, crazy loot and experience. And people are going to respect you and stuff like that. there are rewards to bold action. It's not all just me smacking you in the face every time you want to do something.
Okay. What about the idea of, especially if you're showing something like, whoa, that was a thief and he just got his hand chopped off? Again, I like to use very blatant things for people out there, for the purposes of discussion. That could happen. Yes, that could happen to you. It doesn't mean it will happen to you. So don't, analysis, that wouldn't really be analysis paralysis, but being fearful of taking any action whatsoever because it might be misconstrued or whatever. No. Yes, that could happen. So you can't just go run around stealing from everybody. But if you're sanctioned, or if you risk reward, as you were saying, if you take the appropriate casing the joint, actions to mitigate your chance of being caught, you probably won't lose your wrist, but it could, and I think that's an important aspect to get out there as well. Is just because, yes, murder is a capital punishment. Oh, let's go back to what we were talking about before, environmental fire. Doing anything that could cause a fire is a capital punishment. Okay, but do you think carrying a torch down a dark street is going to get you arrested?
No.
Right, you see what I'm saying? But you know how players will get, but you said that. So. No, I guess that's the point I wanted to make, is just because it could happen doesn't mean it will happen. And I think you guys have expressed that really well. I just want to be blatant about it.
Yep.
All right, Crispy, question for you. What approaches do you take to encourage players to consider the repercussions of their actions, and how do you ensure they feel engaged with the outcomes?
So this is a question that you've been asking me now on every segment, I think, because you keep coming back with this, oh, what about the players that don't like this? And I think it's a fair question. I spend the time creating trust with the players so that they understand that though the world may be antagonistic towards them, it's not me personally. I'm not trying to punish them, as Ryan was saying. The consequence isn't a punishment. I will go so far as in our after game sessions to celebrate the fact that something failed. Like I'd say, like, this was fantastic that you did this and it didn't work. Like, wasn't that great? And look at what happened. Look at this complication. This is fantastic. And I do think it's so important to encourage proactive players. Like we said, I don't view myself as an entertainer. I'm certainly not a storyteller. So if I'm not an entertainer and a storyteller, what's my job? It's to react to proactive players. So as Ryan said, you got to have that discussion early on. Look, I'm not going to move you around, and I'm certainly not going to decide for your character what you're going to be doing. You decide what your character is doing and where your character moves in the world. My job is to make sure that there's believable reactions to that action. And we'll use the dice mechanic, such as it is, to determine if it's a success or a failure. But it's that in essence is a key component to creating engagement with the players, because now they understand that, yes, I have the ability to act as a free agent within this world. I don't get to decide what the world does, but I also trust that my game master is not just out there being heavy-handed or at worst capricious, just deciding on a whim. No, it's time for you to die. Why? Because I need this in this story. It makes more sense for you to die here. I don't think that's a good way to train players with the expectation that there's going to be a level of consistency from their game master. Consistency in the sense that I'm always thinking about what the believable reaction to their actions would be. What is the plausible consequence of this? So now, obviously, there's some players that don't want consequences. They're just not in my games. Like Ryan suggested, when you have that conversation, you're going to have a conversation with me. I'm going to say, look, we're my elevator pitch. I'm back to that. It's going to be a world simulation. You're an actor in this world in the sense that you act independently.
Yep.
And that, not as in thespianism. Okay. We often get accused of that. Oh, you guys are just thespians. No.
Come on, you got to do it right. Actors.
Right. No, I'm not. Okay. I'm not at all. And I don't insist on that. What I do insist on is someone that's going to take the world seriously. And you can't have, I find it hard to accept the argument that you can be fully engaged in the game if you don't take the world seriously. And a key component of that is what we've been talking about tonight. You take the world seriously because you understand, if I miss this fireball and I burn down that stable, there are going to be consequences. And I'm not going to whine. I don't accept whining because I game with adults. So I just don't accept it. We'll have that layer. And the reason I can say that, Max, I think, because I'm trying to anticipate your question, which is, you know what? But players will have at times a difference of opinion. They'll say, I don't like the way that you handled this. But if we have that trust that I've spent a lot of time over many sessions building that level of trust between me and the players, or between myself and the game master when I'm a player, I know it's not them just being vindictive.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a vindictive. I may disagree with it, but I know he's not doing this to get at me. It's
Mm-hmm.
not that. It's him trying to simulate the world as best he can.
Okay, you actually answered 3 follow-up questions in that. And to be fair, I know we're pressed for time here, so I think it's easy for me to move on here. I'll express my commentary on that probably in my final thoughts here. But yeah, I honestly, I just can't really disagree with what you said. So, other than I've been around players, and sometimes there's just no reasoning with them.
That's true. And they have no seat in your table. Goodbye.
And I love hearing more and more people say that so gaming's for everybody, sure, but doesn't mean you have to be at my table. Number one, number two, I think gaming can be for everybody. It isn't for everybody.
Right.
Anyway, Connell, let's get you to knock out this question and be the last one for the night. What approach do you take to encourage players to consider the repercussions of their actions, and how do you ensure they feel engaged with the outcomes?
I try to make them reasonable. I really do. And once again, this is not a jab at you, Crispy. I do game with children and I game with adults. And when it comes to consequences, I find it easier to deal with the kids than adults. I don't know what breed of gamers you're collecting, but they don't live in my area. They're, I don't know why, but, $20 is $20, as some have said. But I try to make it reasonable, to a certain degree. If you get caught stealing, or stealing, let's go with stealing for right now. There's going to be consequences. You're going to get the character's going to get arrested. They're going to get banned from that town, so forth and so on. I don't outrightly just say, "Well, I caught you stealing, and I'm going to cut off your hand." I would be really hard pressed to find a player that be, "Well, okay, here's my hand," and not just walk up and leave the table. If they do, I'm going to start questioning it, because I'm not running a pirate campaign. I'm sorry, you can't be Captain Hook, or can you? Anyways, but so you have to make the consequences be reasonable to the scenario. If they're murdering a bunch of hobo murderers, just knocking off every village, well, we are no longer playing a good campaign. Congratulations, we have now evolved to an evil campaign. Everybody of the good alignment is now after you. And just try to make them understand that their actions do have consequences. As I said earlier, I use Greek or Roman mythology to try to teach ethics and morals in campaign with kids. With adults, it's a mixed bag of nuts. It really is. You get players that are cool with it. Yeah, I shouldn't have done that and want to stay. Or, I can't believe you. You're just being an asshole because I'm ... If you want to play let's go back to races really quick. And I'm trying to make this quick. I'm old school. I'm maybe not as old school as these gentlemen, but to a certain degree, I'm old school. If you want to play certain races as a drow, a tiefling, or something of that nature, you're going to catch hell from everybody. I'm sorry. There's going to be amount of racism that you're going to have to deal with. Or even dialing it down to elves and dwarves. There's going to be, if you are a dwarf and walk into an elvish forest, you're going not to be the most trusted person in that forest. A human might get more love than you do. So I try to make it reasonable.
So I'm going to put this on you because you're in the more gaming group, and then we'll be done for the night. how do you handle a situation? And this is a very particular question, so listen to the wording. How do you handle situations where one player's reaction to consequences disrupts the entire group dynamic?
Go out there, collect your money from the cashier. We'll try again next week.
Okay. So as a paid game master, you'd kick somebody out just as easily as, okay, how about this? It's a friend of yours.
You'll talk to the cashier. He'll give you your money back. We'll try again next week. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. I cannot play favorites when you're a paid TM. You just can't.
No, that's fair, but I think that people need to understand that whether it's a friend group, whether it's a paid group, or it's just some random group, that sometimes the person isn't meant for that table.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
If
I have
it's
friends
at
that I don't
somebody's house,
play role-playing games with.
Right.
if it's at somebody's house and I DM like, hey, go get me a beer, but it's a different scenario between house and a shop.
Okay, well, I think this has been a longer stream tonight. I think, I know Ryan's got to go here, and I don't want to hold him much longer. This isn't a call it, but no, I mean, I said it'd be 3.5 hours, and we're past the 3.5 hour mark, so I get it. So let me wrap this up for folks. Just and Ryan, you can drop out at any point that you want to. I just got my quick follow up to do. If you got to go, don't let me keep you. So folks know, this week on Sunday, we're going to be continuing on with Rule Cyclopedia. We're going to be covering the fighter, the magic user, the thief, and I think the dwarf. So we're hitting 4 of the character class. That's all we're going to talk about this week. As far as Rule Cyclopedia goes, Heathen Dog is going to cover Rift's World Book number 3, England. Next week is going to be class-based versus skill-based tabletop RPGs, and I didn't write down the names of the folks who are going to be on here, but I think it's full. So it's going to be fun to talk about what's better, class-based or skill-based. I have an opinion on that. And we have one chat, I think, that I started to bring up here, or was it 2? It was 2. Zonalar says, don't be afraid of doing mistakes, and some GMs are too punishing and turn players into passive players because they get burned too many times.
Yeah. Yep.
I might be a little different than Ryan over here with regard to the referee side of things. I take a little bit more active role, but I'm not an adversary. My job is to put challenges in front of you, whether they're consequential challenges, whether they're combat challenges, whatever. And your job as a player is to resolve those challenges. You can engage them, you can avoid them, you can talk about them, whatever that happens to be. Not everything has to be stabbed with a knife. But I'm not your adversary other than I put challenges in front of you. Or you put challenges in front of yourself. That happens as well. And I'm the one that says, what you just did puts a challenge in front of you. But it's not an adversarial, I hate you type of mentality.
Real quick, Max, I am going to drop out. So good night, everyone. Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure, Ryan.
Yeah. I hope we have a chance to talk in the future.
I hope you sign up for another one because I loved having you on. You have a great night, sir. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. Do you guys have any thoughts on that comment or? Okay.
Nothing comes to mind. No.
And yeah, folks, just so I do send out how long it's going to be, and especially the guys like the Basic Expert or Ryan that have kids, I completely understand that they've got to go. Is why I kind of sped it up at the end. But to be fair, we've pretty much talked about everything. So, last comment that I've got starred here. Oops, I can get rid of that one and that one. Michael Stronghold says, over the years, I've loosened my reins a little when players try to do something wild. If players are thinking, being creative, and in line with our shared internal logic, I'm not going to punish. I have one caveat. Oops, I do that. Get off the screen. I have one caveat to that. I always look, and maybe you can call this a bad game master if you want, but I always look for the angle of what they're trying to abuse. And this comes from some friends of mine who are really good at this stuff. They can look at the wording of something, or they can look at how they feel it should act, and try to manipulate a spell, ability, a talent, a power, a skill, whatever, into something that it's really not meant to be. Because let's be honest, Crispy said that, he wants was it the world simulator? Is that the word? Yep. It doesn't matter how many rules a game has, it cannot cover for every little crazy thing that a player is going to try to do. Just can't.
Nope.
So they're a framework. And you have
They
to
are.
look at that framework. So when I see a comment that I just had on the screen, unfortunately I removed it, so I can't put it back up. I agree, but I'm still going to look to see, whoa, that ingenuity here. Is this something that you're going to try to turn into a crutch? Is this something you're going to try to get by with constantly? So what I tend to do is this. That's funny because Sean Robertson from Palladium Books, he does the same thing. So I'm in good company here. Connell, that was a great idea. And since I know this is what your character is planning on doing, I'm going to let you get by with it this round. Don't ever try that again because it is not the intent of it. And you know that. Okay? So let's do your rule of cool. I hate that term, but we'll go with let's do your rule of cool right now. Let's see what happened, what the result of this is through dice rolls or just it works or whatever. But no, I'm not going to let you turn this into a crutch. That's how I handle that.
I laugh because I am very much guilty of that. I'm lucky enough to have players in my campaigns that don't exactly break rules as written, but
Yeah, but I mean, you guys talked about one time putting some magical gem on the end of an arrow or whatever.
Yeah,
and
this is the one. Rules as written says if you throw a bead of force, it makes a magical spear or whatever, and they're stuck in it. Doesn't say that it has to come off of a necklace or anything. It just has to be thrown. So I'm an archer in real life. I love archery. It's one of my side hobbies, and it's the weight, and the way they describe it in the game, it weighs like no more than like a marble. So I've super glued a marble to an arrow shaft and shot it. No problems. So my thought processing is to this was I'll super glue a bead of force to a blunt arrow. I shoot enemy companion that is either small or medium to stay in the range of the spell, and boof, they get stuck in a spear of force, and they take damage. I've had DMs absolutely love the idea because I'm not technically breaking any rules as written, and I've had other DMs like no, or putting a pearl of fireball on an arrow and shooting that, which I get told no. And if somebody tells me no, I don't push it. No is no. But if you're running a campaign as a DM as rules as written, and you have some MacGyver dumb shit like me trying to play in the proverbial box and trying something new, why can't I try something new? Why shouldn't they be able to try something new? Just because it doesn't work in the mechanics that you have in your head, I can explain the physics behind it, how it works in real life.
yeah, but this is exactly my point in the purpose of players try to rationalize everything.
Oh yeah, that's why I said I'm guilty.
So my
Go ahead, Crispy.
my solution to this is a little different. I understand where you're coming from, Max, and I used to think a lot of this, especially when I was playing when I was introduced in '97 to fantasy role playing, and I was the tail end of 3rd edition, and then 3.5, and then all of the subsequent editions after that, and then other things. And it was always a question when playing 3.5 and Pathfinder, and what are you trying to exploit here? Now, so I understand where you're coming from. They're like, you're just trying to win the game with some hack that technically is allowed but breaks the game. I don't have to deal with that anymore because I've changed the win condition of the game. And this is when I talk about high trust gaming. This is what I'm talking about. We're not, for us, in my games, I want the players to understand that winning is having those moments where the fictional world feels real to you and you understand your character and you're in your character's skin, and that character in that moment or in that conflict, you can hear what's going on. You can imagine this. You're into this flow state where you're absolutely convinced that no matter, we all understand it's fictional, it's a pretend thing, but for that moment, we are absolutely there, all of us, and we're having this shared imagination experience. That's winning. And so my players no longer are exploit finders. They're not looking for that. That's not the win condition. It's not. The win condition is, I really understand this character. To me, the character felt real in this moment. And how many moments of that can we have? So again, I understand if you don't trust, if you're You're in you're at a position where your players are really just looking for the next way to win or hack their way to well, this is what it's going to be. Instead of being creative in character, they're trying to use their mastery of the system.
Right.
And that's I understand how that can be a problem. I would suggest that my solution for that is simply we're not looking for system hacks. We're looking for role play. The focus is the role play. That's the win condition. Does that make sense?
You and I, yeah, absolutely. I think we sometimes use a little different terminology, but I call it organic role play. Like I was talking with somebody at work today, and he's more of a miniatures gamer, but he also does Pathfinder and so on and so forth. So one of my pet peeves is when people, and this is a really dumb scenario, and it's probably not even the right rules, but just to put the visual out there, you're fighting in a doorway. I've got Connell in that doorway, and I'm fighting him. A goblin comes through the ceiling, but for whatever reason, the game mechanics are that's a +2 to hit the goblin coming through the ceiling. Normal organic reaction is, Connell, you're a boxer. I did martial arts. Isn't to be like, hold on, I'm going to go get this new thing that's going on right here. It's to finish up with you, typically speaking, right? But the game says I get a +2, so why wouldn't I attack the goblin? I fucking hate that part in the costume. Yeah, I hate that. I like organic play. Again, a little bit different term. I call it being in the headspace of your character.
Sure.
I'm always in the headspace of my character, watching any of the games that I'm in. And that's how I role play constantly. So I'm completely for that. But there are a lot of players out there. I see them in chat. Like, this is just a game. What is it? Dundermoose even just said hex crawl. And I'm not saying that Dundermoose is espousing this, but just using the common game out there. What? It's just a hex crawl and we're getting gold. Like, what is all this other nonsense? We're playing a dumb game. It's just different styles for different folks. So those folks, again, not saying this about Dundermoose. Actually, welcome Dundermoose. I don't know if I've ever seen you in one of the streams here before. But there are players who are there to hack the game, to beat. I don't even think that, I don't even like using the word win condition, because I don't think you do win at games like Dungeons and Dragons or Traveler or whatever else. It's the experience is the win, right? But we have to, for the purposes of these, sorry, Connell, just real quick, for the purposes of these videos, I have to address people like you that do, 4D or high-end role playing, more traditional role playing, people who like miniature gaming, and people who like who are just like, dude, this is just a dumb game, and I'm just hanging out with my friends, having my beer and pretzels. So I kind of have to tailor everything towards all the different types.
I just, since I'm using myself as an example, especially with the arrow trick, it's not, for me personally, it's not winning the game that is the goal for me. It is surviving the encounter, surviving the game. Let's see if I can get a character from first level to when the game wraps up. That's my goal these days. Just let's see how far I can get this character to go.
That's kind of defeatist, isn't it? Like to me, that doesn't.
No, because I enjoy myself, and it's not so much a mark on the belt, but I game with freaking Bruce, and Bruce is always trying to either have my character eaten or break my damn bow. That's his.
Well, yeah. I mean, there can be such a thing, and I'm not saying this is Bruce, but there can be. It's like the game masters who always kill your horses. I hate that stuff. Okay. To answer one question here, and then we do got to wrap it up. We can talk about a lot more of this during segment 5, because I know there's also a couple people want to jump in and talk about this. Connor got excited about his bead trick. Why wouldn't you pay up? Why wouldn't you pay off that enthusiasm? I would one time.
Yeah. I'm okay with creative things. I had a player once use invisibility as an offensive spell, because we were playing in an emergent magic Chicago current day. So magic's now, but no one knows that it actually works. They're being chased by some feds. The character casts invisibility on the driver of the chase car. Well, nice. his companion now looks over and sees there's no one driving the car, panics, and tries to get into the driver's seat. The driver looks over at his passenger, who's now fighting to get. He doesn't realize that he's invisible. He just got turned invisible. He doesn't know that yet. So they're fighting one another, and that's a creative use of
Absolutely.
What is usually. And
I wouldn't even think about limiting that. So, you can only do that once. But I'm definitely talking his mentality, what he was doing. That's a one-time good deal.
So I like creativity. I think it's good.
it's not hacking. Okay, this is probably a conversation for a different night, and I'll be good. I like out of the box thinking. I love one of the main reasons I love gaming.
Okay, but let's be honest, that's not out of the box thinking because you do it all the time.
Nah.
You've admitted to doing it.
I love new DMs. But I love DMing for kids because you never know which way from Sunday they're going to approach anything. Now, when it comes to adults, I've been playing this game since whatever system came out. There's rule lawyers and there's people like me and so forth and so on. You tend to know what direction they're going to be driving at you. But kids, man, it's you never quite know. So they keep you on your feet. And if somebody does something cool, it's a high five. I mean, just across the table, high five.
I agree. All right, let's end this because I don't think we're talking about consequences anymore. So let's end this, and then just so I want to remind folks, next week is going to be class-based versus skill-based games, and I think we got one person on who's skill-based, one person on is class-based, and one person that's I hope I have that, but anyway, and we'll talk about that next week. Also, for the folks watching the live stream right now, there is going to be some outro music that plays. That's for the purposes of the video later. This live stream is going to continue on. You don't have to leave. Not going anywhere. We're going to continue. We're going to even bring in a couple more people to talk about stuff, just to kind of hang out. Connell and Crispy, you're welcome to stay or go as you please. But let me get through this part first. So finally, I want to thank everybody who's here. Obviously, thank you very much to tonight's panel of Connell, Crispy, and Ryan, also known as Rolling Bones. Really appreciate you guys. This was an amazing panel. We went way too long, but this is a good long. This isn't one of those that's, oh my God, would people shut up? Let's get this over with. No, this was a great panel tonight. Had a good time. I hope you guys that were watching agree. And whether you agree or disagree with any panelists, I sincerely hope their perspectives both entertained and educated you and gave you some food for thought for your future gaming sessions. Of course, if you enjoy this discussion, please like this video, subscribe to Legion of Myth, and to all the panelists whose links you can find in the description. For my final comments, I'm disjointed today. And my final comments really, I just think they knocked it out of the park. There are a few things I kind of want to bring up. Maybe I'll do that in the segment 5. But I really said everything that I wanted to. I'm going through my notes real quickly just to make sure. Nope. I think we're outroing this thing. No more... Don't need to waste your time. So no final commentary from me tonight. We've had it all. And I want to thank everybody once again for being here. I'm delaying so I can find my stupid outro music. And there it is. And I wish everybody a great week.